Zeus, Kronos, Pandora's box, or King Midas are names that sound familiar to us, but do you know its origin? Do you know how they were created? How the Greek world and its mythology arose? In this video, we will solve all those doubts. At first, there was only chaos, the god of the windy nothingness, Nyx, the goddess of the night, Erebus, the god of endless darkness, and Tartarus, the god of the darkest place in the underworld and the abyss. Nyx, the goddess of the night, in the form of a giant black bird laid a golden egg, and in the form of the bird, she sat on it for a great deal of time. Finally, life began inside the egg, and when it burst, Eros, the god of love, sprouted. Half of the eggshell rose up and became the sky, and the other fell down and became the earth. Eros and Chaos then mated, and from that union arose the birds, the first living beings that predate even the gods. After that, Eros gathered all the necessary ingredients to create the immortals, starting with Uranus and Gaia and all the other gods. Then eventually the gods created humans and the world was fully created. Uranus, the sky god, and Gaia, the earth goddess, became the first gods to rule the world. Together they gave birth to the first titans and are grandparents or great-grandparents to most of the gods. Every night, Uranus covered Gaia and slept with her. Gaia gave him children, the 12 titans, the Hecatoncheires, beings with 100 arms, and the Cyclopes. However, Urano hated his children and did not want to see them, so he imprisoned them in the depths of Gaia, or in Tartarus according to the myth. This greatly distressed Gaia, and she forged a giant stone sickle. She then implored her sons to castrate Urano. None of her children seemed to want to rise up against her father, except for the youngest titan, Cronus. Cronus was ambitious and accepted Gaia's offer. Gaia had him ambush Urano. In fact, Cronus did it successfully, cutting off Urano's genitals and throwing them into the sea. From the blood were born the giants, the Erinyes, or Furies, and the Melii, the nymphs of the ash tree. From the foam that was created when the genitals fell into the sea, Aphrodite was born. Cronos took the throne, married his sister, the Titan Rhea, and gave birth to the Golden Age, an age in which there was no immorality or need for laws, because everyone, gods and humans, did what was right for themselves. Urano, in a fit of rage and swearing revenge, warned Cronus and Rhea that they were destined to be overthrown by their own children. Cronus took this warning to heart, and when he and Rhea began to have children, he demanded that she give them to him. Once Rhea gave him the baby, Cronus swallowed it whole. Rhea gave birth to the gods Poseidon, Hestia, Hera, and Demeter, and Cronus swallowed them all. Rhea was devastated each time, so when she was about to give birth to her sixth child, Zeus, she went to Gaia with pleas for help. Together, Gaia and Rhea devised a plan to save Zeus from Cronus. She went to Crete to give birth, and once she did, she left the baby in a cave on Mount Ida, where the goat Amalthea was, and a company of young warriors, the Coretes, took charge of Zeus. Rhea wrapped a stone in baby wrappers and presented it to Cronus as her son. Cronus swallowed the stone whole, like the other babies before. That stone was the Omphalos, which was at Delphi in the temple of Apollo. Zeus grew up hidden from Cronus by the Coretes, who danced and waved their weapons, making noise to mask the crying of the baby. When Zeus was old enough to challenge Cronus, he used an herb provided by Gaia to make Cronus vomit up all of his siblings that he had swallowed. She first vomited up the stone, and then all the gods in the reverse order in which Cronus had swallowed them. Now flanked by his brothers, Zeus was ready to declare war on Cronus. He descended to Tartarus, where the Hecatoncheires and the Cyclops were imprisoned. He freed them in exchange for their alliance against Cronus. The Hecatoncheires used their 100 hands to hurl giant boulders at Cronus, while the Cyclopes were the first to forge lightning and thunder for Zeus. Except for Themis, the goddess of justice, and Prometheus, the other titans allied with Cronus, and the great war of the gods, the Titanomachy, began. The war lasted 10 years, and there are several secondary myths related to it. In the end, Zeus's side won. There are different versions of how Zeus, now the victorious new king of the gods, treated the Titans. One version is that he threw the Titans into Tartarus and had the Centaurs protect them. Another was that he gave them leniency. Once won, Zeus and his brothers Poseidon and Hades divided the world between them. Poseidon took the kingdoms of the sea and water, Hades took the underworld, and Zeus the sky and air. The earth was declared common to all the gods. When he first ascended the throne, Zeus took Metis, the goddess of wisdom, as his wife. Metis was another titan, and it is said that she helped him, along with Gaia, to get her siblings back by making Cronus vomit them up. Metis was prophesied to have extremely powerful children, powerful enough to overthrow Zeus. Zeus did not want to risk suffering the fates of Uranos and Kronos, so he absorbed Metis into himself, gaining wisdom from her in the process. However, Metis was already pregnant with the child, and that child continued to grow inside Zeus's head. The more the baby grew, the more Zeus's head was ravaged by great pain. After a long period of time, Zeus couldn't take the pain anymore and asked Hephaestus, the god of fire, to split his head open with his axe. Hephaestus did so, and from within Zeus's head emerged Athena, fully clothed and armed, decked from head to toe in shining armor. There was some fear that she would turn on Zeus, but as soon as she was released from her, she flung her spear at Zeus's feet, declaring her allegiance to him. Athena became the goddess of wisdom and virtuous warfare and took her place as one of the 12 Olympian gods. Zeus's second and last wife was Hera, the goddess of marriage and childbirth. She is the sister of Zeus and the queen of the gods. Hera is known for blessing and protecting marriage and married women, but she is much more infamous for her terrible jealousy and revenge regarding Zeus's extramarital affairs. Zeus was known for his enthusiastic pursuit of women of all kinds, from nymphs and other goddesses to mortal women and even young men or boys. So, the King of the Depraved would have been a good title for him as well. Through his innumerable unions, with Hera but also with many of the other ladies he pursued, he engendered the rest of the gods that completed the 12 Olympian gods: Athena, Ares, Apollo, Artemis, Hermes, and Dionysus, and in some myths, Hephaestus, were his children who joined him and his siblings Demeter, Hera, Poseidon, and Aphrodite in ruling from Olympus. Beyond Olympus, Zeus spawned several other gods, such as Persephone and the Muses, but also important demigods like Hercules, which you know by his Romanized name Hercules. By the way, I am preparing the story and the 12 labors of Hercules. If you do not want to miss it, subscribe to the channel. All the gods of Olympus call Zeus father, even if he did not father him, and he is considered the king and father of all creation, having power and authority over all other gods and elements. Although Zeus is the king of the gods, the strongest of all and the one with authority in general, his power does not bind everyone. In fact, there are some things that even Zeus can't master. The Fates fall into that category. The Fates, or Moirai, are the 3 goddesses of fate. They are daughters of Nyx, one of the primordial goddesses of the night. Their names were Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos. Clotho means the one who weaves, and it is she who weaves the thread of life of all beings, both immortal and mortal. Lachesis means the one who distributes, and she is the one who gives everyone their measured destiny in life, where they should be. Finally, Atropos means the inevitable, and she is the one who determines the way in which everyone will die and when that death will occur. Atropos is the one with terrible scissors, with which she cuts the thread of life. The gods fear the Moirai, just like mortals, and seek to appease them every time they want to ask them for a favor. The 3 Moirai appear the night a baby is born, and begin to spin her thread, assign her place in life, and determine when and how she will die. The only one capable of deceiving Moirai to change someone's destiny was the god Apollo. Admetus was the king of Pherai, a region of Thessaly. He was a very kind king and renowned for his hospitality. When the god Apollo was exiled from Mount Olympus by Zeus for killing one of the Cyclops in a vengeful act of rage, he was forced to serve as a mortal's servant as punishment. Apollo chose to make his servitude under Admetus and became his shepherd for 1 year. Admetus was a fair and kind master to Apollo, and by the time he ended his servitude, Apollo had developed an affectionate affection for the man. He decided to help him marry the love of his life, Princess Alcestis. That wasn't easy, because Alcestis's father, King Peleus, had decreed that she would only marry the man who could bind a boar and a lion to the same chariot. Apollo helped Admetus, and very quickly, the lion and the boar were yoked to the chariot, and Alcestis became his wife. The couple were very much in love and devoted to each other, and Apollo still considered Admetus under his protection. When Apollo finally realized that Admetus was destined to die young, he got the Moirai drunk and tricked them into changing their decree on the young king's fate. They allowed him to be saved from death if one took his place and died in his place. Although Admetus's parents were elderly, neither was willing to die in his place. It was then that Alcestis volunteered and died in her place. Admetus had his life but had lost his happiness. To his good fortune, Hercules was passing through his city, and feeling compassion for Admetus's plight, offered to fight Thanatos, the god of death, for Alcestis's life. After a fierce battle between Hercules and Thanatos, the god flew away, and Alcestis was able to return to her husband to spend a happy rest of their lives together. Before continuing with the story, if you have come this far and you liked the video, remember to give it a like. It is really important to me, and if you share it and comment on this video, I sacrifice a goat to the gods in your honor. Prometheus was a titan who loved humanity. When Zeus distributed gifts and powers to the gods, he forgot to give any to humans, and Prometheus felt it was a grave injustice. To give them the power and ability to live a better life, Prometheus sneaked into Hephaestus's workshop and took fire from the furnaces. He descended from Olympus with it in a great torch and gave it to the humans, teaching them how to use it. Once the humans had the knowledge, Zeus was unable to retrieve the gift of fire. In a fit of rage, he punished Prometheus by chaining him to a mountain. Every day an eagle swooped down and ate his liver. During the night, the liver regenerated since Prometheus was immortal, and the torture began again. This continued until Hercules found him and broke the chains, freeing him. On another occasion, when Zeus was going to decide what part of the sacrificed animal he would demand from humanity, Prometheus told humans what to do to obtain favorable treatment. He ordered them to polish the bones with butter until they became shiny and wrap them up. In the other, he put good pieces of meat on hairy skin. When Zeus looked at the two options, he was dazzled by the glowing bones and chose them. When Zeus realized his mistake, it was already too late. The king of the gods could not retract his official decree. Since then, the gods must accept and enjoy the smell of cooked meat and animal bones as offerings, while the meat is distributed to the faithful. Angry that humans now had fire, Zeus decided to take revenge. He created a mortal woman. She was the first in history, and they called her Pandora, the one with all the gifts. And she had many gifts. Each god gave her one of hers. Athena gave him wisdom, Aphrodite beauty, Hera loyalty, etc. But Hermes also gave him curiosity and cunning. Once fully created, the gods dressed her to the nines, and Zeus gave her to Epimetheus, brother of Prometheus. Although Prometheus warned Epimetheus not to accept any gifts from Zeus, Pandora's beauty and many charms disarmed him. He forgot his brother's warning and took Pandora as his wife. As a marriage gift, Zeus gave Epimetheus an ornate sealed box and warned him never to open it. Epimetheus agreed. He put the box under the bed he shared with Pandora and warned her not to open the box either. Pandora faithfully and sincerely obeyed the warning for several years, but her curiosity grew stronger every day, and the temptation to peek into the box became unbearable. One day, when her husband was away, she took the box out from under the bed and opened it. Immediately, the lid was flung open and dark smoke billowed out into the world as all evil befell humanity. War, famine, strife, pestilence, death, pain. But along with all the evils, a good thing also sprouted, like a bird that disperses all the darkness: hope. Hades was the brother of Zeus and the king of the underworld. He ruled his kingdom with his trademark quiet finality, but he was alone. One day he saw Persephone, the daughter of Demeter and Zeus, and fell in love with her. He went to Zeus and asked his permission to marry her. Zeus knew that Demeter was very protective of her daughter, so he suggested that she kidnap her. In fact, in a beautiful meadow where Persephone was picking violets, he suddenly saw the most beautiful daffodil flower. He hurried to pick it up. As soon as he did, the earth opened up and Hades appeared in a golden chariot, taking her to the underworld. Later, Demeter searched everywhere for Persephone, but he couldn't find her. Increasingly anxious and despondent, she began to neglect her duty to make the land flourish and bear fruit and crops. The trees began to lose their leaves, and cold swept across the land, followed by snow. And still Demeter sought out Persephone and wept for her. It was the world's first autumn and winter. Finally, Helios, the sun god, told him what had happened. Furious, Demeter went to Zeus and he relented, quickly sending Hermes to the underworld to demand that Persephone return. By then, Hades and Persephone had hit it off, but when Hermes explained that nature had stopped flourishing, Hades agreed to send Persephone back. Before letting her go with Hermes, he offered her pomegranate seeds. Persephone ate 6 of them. Hades knew that if he ate the food from the underworld, he would be bound to it. When Demeter saw his daughter, she was overjoyed, and the earth blossomed again. The world's first spring had arrived. Demeter spent a long, happy time with Persephone, and the fruit of the earth ripened, the first summer. But then Persephone told him about the seeds, and how she had to go back to her husband. Demeter was furious, but Zeus made a compromise. Persephone would spend 6 months of the year in the underworld, and 6 with Demeter. Since then, when Persephone is with Demeter, there is spring and summer, and when she leaves to be with Hades, there is autumn and winter. And that's how the seasons arose. Before the arrival of the Greek Olympian gods like Zeus, Hades, or Poseidon, the world was ruled by the Titans, and in this video I will tell you about their origin and who were the most powerful. It all began with chaos, the primordial void, an existence without form or order. From this abyss were born Gaia, the earth, Uranus, the sky, Tartarus, the underground abyss, and Eros, love, the force that unites and gives life. Gaia, the mother of all that exists, expanded to form the world as we know it. From her emerged mountains, seas, and rivers, but also the desire to create life. Then, Gaia gave birth to Uranus, the starry sky, as her equal, and together they united to populate the world. Their union gave rise to a generation of powerful children, the first gods, the Titans. Uranus became a tyran, fearing that his children would dethrone him, and he locked them in the belly of Gaia, returning them to the interior of the earth. This caused unbearable pain to Gaia, who began to plot a plan to free her children. In her desperation, she created a sickle made of adamantine, a substance as hard as diamond, and called upon her children to rebel against their father. However, only one of them had enough courage to carry out her plan. Number 1. Cronus and Rhea. Cronus is the youngest of the Titans. His face was marked by wisdom, with a mane and gray beard. In his hand, he always held his famous adamantine sickle, the weapon that defined his destiny as well as that of the entire universe. Cronus was born as the youngest of the children of Uranus and Gaia. His childhood was not one of freedom or games. Uranus, fearful of his offspring's power, imprisoned all of his children within Gaia, oppressing Mother Earth in her anguish. A desperate Gaia begged her sons to free her, but only one had the courage to answer, Cronus. With the adamantine sickle his mother forged for him, this young Titan waited for the right moment. And when Uranus descended to lie with Gaia, Cronus struck, castrating his own father in an act of primordial violence that forever separated heaven from earth. With Uranus's cry echoing through the cosmos, Cronus's reign began. But that cry was not only one of pain, it was also a prophecy. You too will fall, my son, and it will be one of your own descendants who will dethrone you. These words embedded themselves in Cronus's mind like a poison that would never cease to torment him. Under the rule of Cronus, the world lived through an era known as the Golden Age. Mortals walked the earth without worry, hunger, or suffering. But in the heart of the king of the Titans, there was no peace. Rhea was majestic, like the nature she represents. She wore long robes, adorned with details that evoked fertility and life. Ears of wheat, pomegranates, and sometimes the horn of plenty. She was depicted in her chariot, pulled by lions. His wife and sister, Rhea, gave him children: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon. And every time a child was born, Cronus remembered his father's prophecy. Seized by uncontrollable fear, he made a decision that marked his destiny. One after another, Cronus swallowed his newborn children, condemning them to a dark existence in the abyss of his stomach. But when Zeus was born, Rhea, broken by grief, hatched a plan. She tricked Cronus with a rock wrapped in swaddling clothes, handing it to him as if it were the newborn. Cronus, blinded by his paranoia, swallowed the rock without hesitation, while Rhea hid Zeus in a distant cave. Zeus grew up far from his father's reach. When he reached maturity, he returned to confront the Titan who had fathered him. With the help of Rhea and allies such as Prometheus, the Cyclopes, and the Hecatonchires, Zeus began the Titanomachy, a war that shook the foundations of the universe. For 10 long years, the conflict engulfed gods and titans in an epic showdown. Finally, Zeus managed to free his siblings from Cronus' stomach, thus fulfilling the prophecy. With his lightning bolt, forged by the Cyclopes, Zeus led the final attack. Cronus and the Titans were defeated and confined to Tartarus, the deepest abyss, guarded by the Hecatonchires, so that they could never escape. Number 2. Oceanus and Tethys. When the world was still young and the Titans walked the earth as giants, Oceanus stood tallest of all. But this Titan was not like his brothers. He was described as having a beard and hair that flowed like waves, sometimes with bull horns, reflecting the silent force of the currents. Oceanus was the father of all rivers, seas, and currents. At his side was Tethys, the fountain of life that complemented his greatness. Wherever she passed, springs gushed forth, and her figure radiated calm and goodness. Together, they were the perfect balance, Oceanus as the colossal river that surrounded the world, and Tethys, the fresh waters that nourished the earth. From this union were born the great rivers of the earth, such as the Nile and the Meander, and the Oceanids, 3,000 aquatic nymphs, guardians of lakes, springs, and fountains. Among them were figures such as Styx, Clymene, and Electra, essential in Greek myths. Through their offspring, Oceanus and Tethys were considered the progenitors of almost all waters and of life itself. In Greek mythology, Oceanus was the river that encircled the world and marked the boundary between the human and the unknown. Beyond its waters lay the mysterious, such as the islands of the blessed, home of immortal heroes. When war broke out between the Titans and the Olympians, Oceanus and Tethys chose neutrality. While their siblings fought and fell, they continued to flow, unchanged, free to follow their eternal course as guardians of balance and life. Number 3. Hyperion and Theia. Hyperion, the Titan of heavenly light, represented eternal vigilance from above. His name, He Who Walks Above, or He Who Watches from Above, reflected his connection to the primordial light. His figure radiated a warm and solemn glow, as if the dawn itself inhabited his skin. He was depicted with a crown of sun rays, the precursor of future solar deities and a symbol of their power. But even the most majestic of the Titans needs an equal, and Hyperion found his perfect match in Theia, his Titan sister. The name Theia, the divine and resplendent, could not be more appropriate. If Hyperion was the all-encompassing celestial light, Theia personified the tangible brilliance that beautifies existence. It was she who gave splendor to gems, to gold under the sun, and to crystals that reflect moonlight. This link to the treasures of the earth made her a goddess of beauty and abundance, uniting heaven and earthly world in perfect harmony. From the union of these two titans were born 3 children who represented the fundamental cycles of light. Helios, the god of the sun, who crossed the sky with his golden chariot, illuminating the world. Selene, the goddess of the moon, whose silver light guided mortals in the darkness. Eos, the goddess of dawn, who with her rosy fingers opened the doors of day each morning. Through them, Hyperion and Theia left an eternal legacy that ensured the balance between day and night, light and darkness. However, the days of splendor of the Titans would not last forever. When Cronus led the Titans against his father Uranus, Hyperion fought at his side as one of the most powerful warriors. Later, in the Titanomachy, the war between the Titans and the Olympians, Hyperion once again faced chaos. Despite his power and his connection to the heavenly light, he could not avoid defeat. He was dragged along with his brothers to Tartarus, the deepest abyss of the underworld, where he was chained. Unlike Hyperion, Theia chose to stay out of conflict. Her essence was not meant for combat, but rather to preserve clarity and balance. Thanks to her neutrality, Theia avoided the fate of the defeated Titans and continued to shine as a reminder that light and wisdom transcend even the darkest moments of the cosmos. Number 4. Coeus and Phoebe. Coeus was no ordinary Titan. He represented much more than strength or dominion. He was the Titan of celestial intelligence, the seeker of knowledge and the bridge between the divine and the rational. While his brothers embodied chaos or brute force, Coeus looked up to the stars, trying to decipher the order of the universe. His name, derived from the Greek word koios, inquiry or question, reflected his essence. Coeus was not a warrior, but rather an observer, a guide for those seeking to understand the mysteries of the world. In his quest for knowledge, Coeus found in Phoebe, his Titan sister, an ideal companion. Phoebe, known as the goddess of clarity and lunar prophecy, represented wisdom and divine mysteries. While Coeus personified reason and intellect, Phoebe brought intuition and perception, being the perfect complement to her partner's celestial intelligence. From this union were born two daughters who reflected essential aspects of the cosmos: Leto, who would later be the mother of Apollo, and Artemis. The second daughter was Asteria, the personification of the starry night, mother of Hecate, the goddess of magic, crossroads, and nocturnal mysteries. Through their daughters, Coeus and Phoebe left a legacy that would directly influence the cycles of light, wisdom, and the mysteries of the cosmos. Coeus, although more inclined to contemplation than combat, could not escape conflict. During the Titanomachy, he took up arms alongside his Titan brothers to confront the Olympians led by Zeus. However, war was not his domain. After the defeat, he was dragged to Tartarus along with the other Titans, locked in the deepest abyss. Phoebe, on the other hand, took a different path. Her nature was not made for violence or destruction. During the Titanomachy, she stood by, ensuring that the light of wisdom and clarity was not extinguished even in the darkest of times. Thanks to her neutrality, Phoebe escaped the fate of her siblings and continued to shine as a beacon of peace and balance. Number 5. Mnemosyne. Mnemosyne was the very embodiment of memory, the power that preserves the past, sustains the present, and builds the future. Her name, derived from mneme, the Greek word for memory, reflected her essence. She was the goddess who preserved stories, myths, and knowledge, ensuring that nothing truly important was lost to oblivion. Mnemosyne's most prominent role in Greek mythology is as the mother of the Muses, the divinities of arts and knowledge. Zeus, the king of the gods, visited Mnemosyne for 9 consecutive nights, seduced by her wisdom and charm. From this union were born the 9 Muses, each representing a different aspect of creativity and knowledge. Calliope, the muse of epic poetry; Clio, the muse of history; Erato, the muse of lyric poetry and love; Euterpe, the muse of music; Melpomene, the muse of tragedy; Polyhymnia, the muse of sacred hymns; Thalia, the muse of comedy; Terpsichore, the muse of dance; Urania, the muse of astronomy. Through these daughters, Mnemosyne ensured that memory was translated into inspiration, creativity, and culture. Every work of art, every song, every story, and every poem had its origin in the ability to remember and transform memories into something new. In this way, Mnemosyne not only preserved the past, but turned it into a source of illumination for the future. Number 6. Themis. Themis personified the order, divine justice, and harmony that kept the cosmos in balance. Her name, meaning order or natural law, reflected her essence as the guarantor of the laws that governed gods, mortals, and nature. She was depicted with universal symbols of justice: a scale to weigh actions impartially, a sword to execute justice, and, in later times, a bandage over her eyes, symbolizing her absolute neutrality. An ally and advisor to Zeus after his ascension to the throne of Olympus, Themis helped establish order between gods and mortals, ensuring the harmony of the universe. During the Titanomachy, she supported the Olympians, not with weapons, but with her wisdom. As consort of Zeus, Themis gave birth to 2 sets of pivotal daughters, the Horae and the Moirae, who controlled fate, underscoring that even the gods were subject to higher laws. In some accounts, Themis was the first guardian of the oracle at Delphi, passing on prophecies and helping mortals understand their place in the universal order. Number 7. Iapetus. A colossal being who inspired both awe and fear, Iapetus symbolized the boundaries that govern existence: life and death, error and learning, the finitude of mortals. His name, meaning the Wounded One, or the Piercer, alluded to his role as a figure defining fundamental boundaries and rules of the cosmos. He was a key player in primordial conflicts. When Uranus oppressed his sons, Iapetus joined Cronus in the rebellion that ushered in the Age of the Titans. Later, during the Titanomachy, he fought alongside Cronus against Zeus and the Olympians, but was defeated and confined to Tartarus. Through his union with Clymene or Asia, Oceanids associated with life, Iapetus left an indelible legacy on humanity through his children. Prometheus, protector of humanity, who stole divine fire and gave it to mortals. Epimetheus, the reckless, who accepted Pandora and unleashed evil upon humanity. Atlas, condemned to bear the sky for his role in the Titanomachy, a symbol of eternal resistance. And Menoetius, punished by Zeus with a lightning bolt for his pride and unbridled fury. Iapetus, although imprisoned, left an indelible mark through his descendants, who embody the deepest and most complex aspects of the human condition. The Greek gods are a group of deities from Greek mythology, who were believed to have control over important aspects of life, such as nature, love, war, wisdom, and fertility. Each god had their own unique abilities and characteristics, and these were believed to influence the lives and decisions of mortals. The Greek gods were worshipped and revered in ancient Greece, and their legacy remains an important part of Western culture and history. In this video, we will know some of the most important gods of Greek mythology. Number 1. Zeus. In Greek mythology, no god was more powerful or more revered than Zeus, king of the gods, god of thunder and lightning. According to legend, Zeus was born to the Titans Cronus and Rhea. Cronos, fearing that one of his children would overthrow him, swallowed each of his newborns. But Rhea managed to save Zeus by hiding him and tricking Cronus into swallowing them up instead. When Zeus grew up, he led a rebellion against his father and the other Titans. With the help of his brothers and the Cyclopes, he defeated them and became ruler of the gods on Mount Olympus. Zeus was known for his wisdom and his sense of justice. He was a just ruler who defended the natural order and punished those who broke the rules. He was often depicted as a wise and regal figure, with a long beard and a thunderbolt in his hand. But Zeus was also known for his many romantic adventures, both with mortal women and other goddesses. These adventures often generated jealousy and conflict among the gods, and many of Zeus's sons and descendants became famous heroes of Greek mythology. Zeus was revered as a powerful and influential god who controlled the forces of nature and ruled the affairs of mortals and immortals alike. His lightning bolt was a symbol of his power, and he was often worshipped with sacrifices and offerings. I'm more simple. I am satisfied that if you are liking this video, you hit the like button and comment below. This is the only way to beat the god of this platform called the algorithm. Number 2. Poseidon. In Greek mythology, the sea was ruled by Poseidon, god of the sea and earthquakes. Poseidon was one of the 12 Olympian gods and was known for his power and strength. He was often depicted as a muscular, bearded figure, wielding a trident, which he used to raise storms and control waves. According to legend, Poseidon was also born to the Titans Cronus and Rhea and was one of 6 brothers. Like his brother Zeus, Poseidon fought against his father and the Titans, helping to overthrow them and establish the rule of the Olympian gods. Poseidon was worshipped as the god of the sea, and many sailors and seafarers prayed to him for safe passage and protection. He too was associated with horses, and was often depicted riding a chariot drawn by magnificent steeds. One of the most famous myths of Poseidon has to do with his trident, which he received from the Cyclops. With this powerful weapon, Poseidon could cause earthquakes, create storms and tidal waves, and even split rocks and create springs. Poseidon was worshipped in many temples throughout the ancient world, but one of the most famous was the Temple of Poseidon at Sunion. This temple was dedicated to Poseidon as the god of the sea, and was a popular destination for travelers and worshippers alike. Poseidon may have been a fearsome and powerful god, but he was also a symbol of the vast and unpredictable power of the sea. His influence is still felt today, and the stories and legends of him continue to amaze us. Number 3. Hades. In Greek mythology, the underworld was ruled by Hades, god of the dead and the afterlife. Hades was one of the 12 Olympian gods, but unlike his brothers Zeus and Poseidon, he ruled the underworld. the realm of the dead. He was often depicted to her as a stern and distant figure, with a dark beard and piercing eyes, seated on his throne of bones. One of the most famous myths of Hades involves his kidnapping of Persephone, daughter of the goddess Demeter. Hades fell in love with Persephone and tricked her into eating pomegranate seeds, which meant that she had to spend part of the year in the underworld as her queen. This myth explained the changing of the seasons, as Demeter mourned the absence of her daughter and refused to let the plants grow. Hades was also associated with the river Styx, the river that separated the world of the living from the underworld. The souls of the dead had to cross the river with the help of the ferryman Charon, and Hades would judge them and assign them to the most appropriate destination in the afterlife. Another famous aspect of Hades's mythology is his watchdog, Cerberus. This three-headed beast guarded the entrance to the underworld and prevented living beings from entering or dead souls from escaping. In the underworld, Hades presided over the fields of asphodels, a place where ordinary souls would go after death. However, there were other destinations as well, such as the Elysian Fields for heroes and Tartarus for villains. Hades may have been a dark and sinister figure, but he was also a major god in Greek mythology, presiding over the afterlife and ensuring that the dead were judged and assigned to their proper places. Number 4. Hera. Hera was one of the most powerful and influential goddesses in Greek mythology. As the wife of Zeus, king of the gods, she was revered as the queen of the gods and goddesses, and she was known for her beauty, intelligence, and fierce determination to protect her family and her dominance. Hera was the goddess of marriage, childbirth, and the family, and couples often invoked her for her blessings on their union. She was said to preside at weddings and bless the marriage bed, and she was revered as a protector of families and children. But Hera was also a goddess who commanded respect and loyalty. She was known for her powerful and unyielding nature, and was often depicted holding a scepter, a symbol of her authority and power over gods and mortals alike. Throughout her mythology, Hera was a force to be reckoned with. She was known for her intense rivalries with other gods and goddesses, particularly with the many lovers and illegitimate children of her husband Zeus. Hera was often portrayed as a jealous and vengeful figure, punishing those who crossed her path or threatened her family. But Hera was also a goddess of great beauty and royalty, and was often depicted on her throne, surrounded by peacocks, symbols of her majesty and power. Despite her fierce reputation, Hera was also a complex and multifaceted figure, embodying both the positive and negative aspects of the human experience. She was a goddess who inspired both awe and fear. Number 5. Demeter. Demeter is one of the most important goddesses in Greek mythology, and she is known for her abilities as a goddess of agriculture and fertility. It is said that Demeter was the one who taught humans to cultivate the land, to sow and to reap. She is also considered the protector of the fields, and her blessing was believed to be necessary for a good harvest. Another of Demeter's abilities is her ability to control the weather and the seasons of the year. She believes that she is able to grow plants and crops just by moving her hand. Furthermore, it is said that she can cause earthquakes and other earth-related natural disasters. As a loving mother, Demeter is known for her great strength and determination. When her daughter Persephone was kidnapped by Hades, the god of the underworld, Demeter devoted herself to searching for her tirelessly, and her grief caused her to neglect the land, which caused a great famine and gave rise to the seasons of the year. Number 6. Athena. Athena is the goddess of wisdom, military strategy, arts and crafts, justice and civilization. Athena is known for her intellectual and strategic abilities. She is the patron saint of the city of Athens, and it is believed that it was she who taught humans to grow olive trees and to weave, making her the goddess of crafts. In addition, Athena is a warrior goddess and protector of heroes. She is known for her ability to plan strategies and carry out successful tactical actions in war. She is also the protector of warriors and brave men, and it is believed that she can grant them special abilities in battle. Athena is a fair and civilized goddess. She is credited with creating laws and promoting justice and equality. She is also a protective goddess of citizens, especially women and children. Number 7. Apollo. He is the god of the sun, music, poetry, healing, knowledge, and prophecy. Apollo is known for his beauty and his grace. It is said that he is a talented musician and poet, and that he is the creator of the lyre, a stringed instrument that became one of the most important in Greek culture. He is also considered a healing god, and is believed to have the ability to heal illnesses and injuries. Also, Apollo is known for his prophetic ability. In Greek myth, Apollo is said to be able to predict the future and send messages to humans through oracles and prophecies. He is also the protector of the city of Delphi, where the famous Oracle of Delphi is located. Apollo is a warrior god and protector of heroes. He believes that he can grant special abilities in battle and that he helps the heroes in their adventures. He is also the god of the sun, and it is believed that he drives his chariot across the sky each day, bringing light and warmth to Earth. Number 8. Artemis. Artemis is one of the most important goddesses in Greek mythology. She is the goddess of the hunt, the moon, wild nature, and protector of young women. Artemis is known for her skill in hunting and protecting nature. It is said that she is an expert hunter and that she always manages to catch her prey. She is also the protector of wild animals, and it is believed that she can punish those who harm them without reason. In addition, Artemis is the goddess of the moon and is related to her power and beauty. She is believed that she has the ability to change the shape of the moon from dark to light, and that she is able to control the elements of the night and the mysteries of the full moon. Artemis is also a protective goddess of young women. She is considered a protector of maidens, and it is said that she can help protect women in situations of danger or difficulty. Number 9. Ares. Ares is the god of war in Greek mythology and is known for his ferocity and bravery on the battlefield. Ares is believed to be the god of war and conflict. He is described as a fearless warrior, never stopping at anything and having incredible strength in battle. Ares is often depicted with armor and weapons of war, such as swords and spears, and it is said that he can protect and aid warriors in battle. Although often described as a violent god, Ares is also known for his capacity for justice and the protection of family and loved ones. In Greek mythology, Ares was considered the father of the Amazons and was seen as a protector of warrior women. In addition, it is said that Ares had the ability to transform into different forms, which allowed him to infiltrate the battle and surprise his enemies. He is also related to the fertility and prosperity of the land. Number 10. Aphrodite. Aphrodite is the goddess of love and beauty in Greek mythology, and is known for her beauty and seduction. Aphrodite is said to be the goddess of beauty and attraction, and has the ability to make people fall head over heels for her. She is considered the protector of love and passion, and it is believed that she can influence the hearts of men and women to fall in love. Also, Aphrodite is known for her ability to seduce. She is often depicted with great beauty and an aura of mystery that makes her even more attractive. She is able to use her beauty and charm to get what she wants, and she is said to have seduced many of the gods and mortals of Greek mythology. Aphrodite is also considered the protector of fertility and reproduction. She is associated with the creation of life, and it is believed that she can help women who have difficulty conceiving or having children. Number 11. Hephaestus. Hephaestus is the Greek god of fire, metallurgy, and crafts. Hephaestus is often described as a lame god, and this disability is believed to be due to his being thrown from Olympus by his mother Hera when he was born. However, despite his limp, Hephaestus is a talented and powerful god. It is said that Hephaestus is the god of the forge and metallurgy, and that he has the ability to create powerful weapons and tools for the gods and mortals. He is also known for his ability to create magical items, such as Aphrodite's magical belt, which made her irresistible to men. Furthermore, it is said that Hephaestus has the ability to control fire and metal, and that he is able to make metal melt and mold to his will. He is also credited with mechanical and technological skills, as he is said to have created many ingenious machines and gadgets. Number 12. Hermes. Hermes is the Greek god of trade, travelers, thieves, messengers, and shepherds. He is known for his ability to travel between the world of the gods and the world of mortals, as well as his cunning and quickness. It is said that Hermes is the messenger of the gods, and that he has the ability to quickly travel between Olympus and Earth to carry messages and news. He is also credited with guiding and protecting abilities for travelers, especially those traveling by land. Also, Hermes is known for his cunning and ability to deceive. He is credited with theft and deception skills, and is said to have deceived many of the gods and mortals of Greek mythology. He is also depicted wearing a winged hat and winged sandals, which allow him to quickly fly from one place to another. Another ability of Hermes is to protect shepherds and their flocks, and he is considered the patron of shepherds and herdsmen. He is also credited with healing abilities and is considered a protector of the sick. Number 13. Dionysus. Dionysus is the Greek god of wine, festivals, and fertility. He is known for his ability to create wine and spread ecstasy and joy among mortals. Dionysus is the god of wine and is credited with the ability to create wine from grapes. Furthermore, he is often depicted in the company of satyrs and nymphs, and it is said that he taught mortals the art of viticulture. He is also credited with the ability to transform water into wine. In addition, Dionysus is the god of the festival, and is often depicted in the company of bacchantes and drunken men. It is said that his presence can spread ecstasy among mortals, causing them to break free of their inhibitions and indulge in joy and fun. He is also credited with fertility abilities, and is considered a protector god of nature and animals. He is often depicted as a handsome young god, dressed in animal skins and crowned with a wreath of ivy. Number 14. Hestia. Hestia is the Greek goddess of the home, family, and architecture, and is known for her role as protector of home and community. Hestia is the goddess of the hearth, and is credited with the ability to protect homes and communities from mortals. She is often depicted sitting on a chair with a veil, symbolizing her role as protector of the home. She is also credited with the ability to hold the sacred flame, which symbolizes the continuity and stability of the home and community. Additionally, Hestia is the goddess of architecture, and is credited with the ability to guide architects and builders in the construction of homes and buildings. She is also considered a symbol of stability and continuity in society, and is credited with preservation and conservation skills. In Greek mythology, Hestia is known for her calmness and her love of harmony and peace. She is often depicted as a kind and protective goddess who has a calming and comforting presence. Greek mythology is not only beautiful gods, there are dozens of horrible creatures, disgusting beings and beasts that tormented the Greeks of the time. In this video, we are going to meet the scariest monsters in Greek mythology. Number 1. Typhon. Typhon was known as the father of all monsters. He was born from Gaia, Earth, and Tartarus, the depths of hell. He was said to have been the fiercest creature to ever roam the earth. Typhon was huge. It was said that when he stood up, his head brushed against the stars. The lower half of his body consisted of 2 coiled viper tails that constantly hissed. Instead of fingers, several dragon heads emerged from his hands. It was said that he had wings that, when extended, could block out the sun. Fire flashed in his eyes, striking fear into the heart of any living creature, even mighty Olympians. Typhon was so powerful that the only conceivable opponent to challenge him was Zeus himself. While the other Olympians ran in fear, Zeus stood his ground against the monstrous being. A great battle between Typhon and Zeus ensued, causing countless earthquakes and tsunamis. The war between Typhon and Zeus was so powerful that it threatened to split the planet in 2. Zeus would triumph over Typhon. By shooting 100 well-aimed bolts at the monster's head, Typhon was hurled into the depths of Tartarus, where he was sealed forever. However, this monster's anger could not be contained. While he was trapped underground, he would occasionally experience fits of rage. His fury would manifest in the form of volcanic eruptions, and in this way, Typhon continues to terrorize humanity from his earthly prison. Number 2. Echidna, the mother of monsters. Echidna was half a winged woman with glowing eyes and half a huge, scaly serpent. She had the face of a seductive woman and the body of a reptile. She was immortal, and she used to drag her victims into earth-shattered pits, where she liked to devour them alive. She lived in a cave, deep in the earth. In Greek mythology, Echidna gave birth to many famous monsters that we find in Greek myths. As mentioned above, her partner was the monster Typhon. After her defeat by the Olympians and banishment by Typhon, Echidna and her offspring lived to challenge future heroes. Number 3. The Gorgons. The Gorgons were 3 mortal sisters whose hair was made of live, venomous snakes and could turn anyone to stone just by looking into their eyes. Famous sisters were Stheno, Euryale, and Medusa. Medusa is definitely the most famous and notorious among her kind. Medusa remains a popular monster from ancient mythology. Interpretations of Medusa differ. Some accounts describe how Medusa was born from the archaic marine deity, Ceto. In this version of the tale, Medusa is born with a hideous face and a serpentine tail where her legs should be. In Ovid's Metamorphoses, Medusa is said to have once been a beautiful maiden who was transformed into a hideous monster after being raped in the temple of Athena by the sea god Poseidon. The only aspect of Medusa that remains constant through various legends is her hair, which is said to have been composed of writhing, venomous snakes. Medusa confronts the hero Perseus, who was asked by her stepfather to retrieve the monster's head. Using a mirrored shield given to him by Athena, Perseus saw Medusa's reflection so as not to look directly at the monster. Perseus kills Medusa and cuts off her head. Perseus would use Medusa's head as a weapon against enemies, until he finally presented it to Athena, who placed it on the front of her shield. Number 4. Mermaids, the dangerous and beautiful creatures of Greek mythology. They were often depicted as femme fatales who lured nearby sailors with their enchanting voices to shipwreck on the rocky shore of their island. They used their singing to lure sailors passing through their island and kill them. They were considered the daughters of the river god Achelous. Roman writers associated sirens more closely with the sea, as daughters of Phorcys. Mermaids are found in many Greek stories, particularly Homer's Odyssey. The great hero Ulysses, cunning as he was, sealed the ears of his sailors with wax and tied himself to the mast of his ship to enjoy the beautiful song of the sirens without being tempted to follow the seductive sirens. Number 5. Scylla. According to Greek mythology, Scylla was the daughter of Phorcys and Ketos, once a beautiful nymph longed for by the god Poseidon. The jealous Aphrodite, partner of Poseidon, turned her into a monster, poisoning her bathwater. She had a fish body, a female upper torso, and dog heads that protruded from her neck. She was chasing the rocks of a narrow strait in front of the whirlpool of another terrible monster, Charybdis, which we will see later. In Odyssey, Odysseus's ship passes through the strait after losing 6 of his men to being eaten alive by the monster. Number 6. Charybdis. Charybdis is another scary female monster in Greek mythology. She lived opposite Scylla on the Asian shore of the Bosphorus, a narrow natural strait and continental boundary between Europe and Asia. Charybdis looked like a huge whirlpool, and at the bottom of it, its monstrous mouth with huge, sharp teeth was waiting to devour any ship and sailors on it. Like Scylla, Charybdis is also involved in the myths of Odysseus and the Argonauts, who crossed these straits with some losses. Charybdis was once a beautiful nymph daughter of Poseidon and Gaia. According to myth, she flooded much of the earth to expand her father's kingdom and return with him. This angered his uncle Zeus, who turned her into a monster and banished her to the sea. Charybdis became one of the most fearsome sea monsters. She used to swallow large amounts of water a day, creating whirlpools and devouring the sailors. Number 7. Empusa. Unlike the other creatures on this list, the Empusa is perhaps little known and does not appear in any traditional epics or folk legends. However, her terrifying appearance and her terrifying tendency to feast on blood and human flesh more than warrant her place on our list. The Empusa is often depicted as a beautiful woman who transforms into a creature with sharp teeth, flaming hair, and bat-like wings. Empusa was said to be a demigoddess under the control of the goddess Hecate, a being often associated with crossroads and driveways. The Empusa often seduced young people traveling alone. Once the unsuspecting youth was fast asleep, the creature would shift into her hideous form and devour the boy's flesh and drink his blood for his sustenance. The Empusa is probably best known for her appearance in Aristophanes' The Frogs, where she terrorizes the god Dionysus while traveling to the underworld. Number 8. Harpies. The Harpies were anthropomorphic monsters in Greek mythology, with the body of a bird and the head of a woman. They nailed the souls of the people and handed over lawbreakers to the Erinyes or Furies, the 3 goddesses of revenge and retribution who punished men for crimes against the natural order. When a person suddenly disappeared from Earth, it was said that they had been taken by Harpies to the underworld, the kingdom of Hades, and the dead. They were punishment agents who kidnapped people and tortured them on their way to the underworld. They were vicious, cruel, and violent. Number 9. Lamia. Lamia was a beautiful queen who ruled Libya. She fell to Hera's disadvantage because of her relationship with Zeus. The thunder god loved her because she was beautiful and had children with her who were killed by Hera. Due to her sadness and madness, Lamia transformed into a child-eating monster. Since then, she snatches the children of other mothers out of envy. Number 10. Sphinx. The Sphinx, a monster said to have the body of a lion, the head of a woman, and the wings of an eagle. It is a treacherous and ruthless monster that kills and eats those who cannot answer its riddle. This Sphinx would stop passers-by in the Greek city of Thebes and ask them to answer her riddle, otherwise she would eat them. The Sphinx is perhaps best known for its role in the Oedipus legend. The story goes that while Oedipus was traveling on the road to Thebes, he was confronted by the mysterious creature. The Sphinx blocks Oedipus's path and confronts him with a riddle. Although the exact riddle is not mentioned in ancient Greek legend, the popular version of the story tells that the Sphinx poses the following riddle to the young traveler. Who is the being, the only being among all the inhabitants of the earth, waters and air, which has a only nature? But it has 4 feet, 2 feet and 3 feet, and it is weaker the more feet it has. Oedipus correctly answers the riddle. The man, who crawls on all 4s as a child, on 2 as an adult, and with the help of a cane on 3 legs during the twilight of his life. Having been outplayed at her own game, the Sphinx throws herself off a high cliff. In some versions, the Sphinx devours itself in anger and frustration. If Oedipus had not answered the riddle correctly, he would have been strangled and eaten by the creature, which had been the fate of so many travelers before him. Number 11. Manticore. The Manticore is very similar to its sister monster, the Sphinx. He has a human head, a lion's body and wings, bat wings instead of eagle wings, but still, what it lacks in puzzles, it makes up for with a scorpion tail that can shoot poisonous spikes at people, just like a boss in some kind of ancient Greek video game. The scariest thing is that Manticore had 3 rows of teeth in its human mouth, which frankly disturbs me even when it comes to narrating. If this creatures also creep you out, give me a like and write me in the comments. It's a great help to me. Number 12. Giants. The giants were beings of enormous size. According to Greek mythology, they were human-like but tall in stature and irresistible in strength. Their bodies were scaly and ended in a lizard tail. They had thick hair and a long beard. Although they were of divine origin, they were mortal. Following other stories, the giants were immortal as long as they walked on the land where they were born. They are considered to have superhuman powers, enormous size, and long life, while on the contrary, they lack ethics and imagination. A famous giant was Argus, who served as Hera's guard. Number 13. Chimera. The Chimera was a ferocious, fire-breathing monstrosity possessing the body and head of a lion with the head of a goat protruding from its back and a serpent for a tail. The brief description of the Chimera in the text of the Iliad is the earliest surviving record of the creature. Traditionally, the Chimera is considered to be a woman, and she is said to have given birth to the Sphinx and the Nemean lion. The monster was feared and believed to be a harbinger of storms, shipwrecks, and other natural disasters. The Chimera is best known for her role in the legend of Bellerophon, a hero born in the city of Corinth. King Lobates of Lycia would order Bellerophon to kill the monster to atone for his past sins. Bellerophon, knowing that he would need help for such a task, prayed and then slept in Athena's temple. Upon awakening, he saw the goddess in front of him, leading the mythical horse Pegasus, who possessed the ability to fly. With Pegasus saddled, Bellerophon flew to the Chimera's lair in Lycia. Knowing that the creature was fierce and would not be easily defeated, Bellerophon devised a plan. He tied a large piece of lead to the end of his spear. Mounted on Pegasus, he flew towards the monster. Just as the Chimera opened its mouth to burn the hero with fire, Bellerophon plunged lead into the creature's mouth. The Chimera's fiery breath melted the lead, causing the creature to suffocate to death. Number 14. Lernaean Hydra. The Lernaean Hydra was another daughter of Typhon and Echidna, a hideous sea monster with serpentine features and many serpentine heads. A snake-like aquatic monster with reptilian features. A creature whose poison was so dangerous that even the breath exhaled by the Hydra could be fatal to any man. Furthermore, the Hydra had the unnerving ability to regrow decapitated limbs at an alarming rate. It was said that for every head she cut off, 2 more would grow in her place. Her lair was Lake Lerna in an ancient part of the Peloponnese. The Hydra would hide in an underwater cave that was said to be an entrance to the underworld. The Hydra is known to be the second monster that Hercules encounters during his 12 labors. Before attacking the Hydra, Hercules covers his mouth and nose with a cloth to keep himself safe from the deadly toxins the monster emits from its many mouths. Hercules originally attacks the Hydra with a sickle, sword, or her trademark club. However, the hero quickly realizes that for every decapitated head, the creature quickly grows 2 more. The battle would seem hopeless. Hercules then devises a plan to turn the tide against the monster. As soon as the hero decapitates one of the Hydra's heads, he immediately carries a torch to the stump of her neck. The wound is cauterized, and the creature cannot produce any more menacing heads. Hercules finally releases the final head of the Hydra, effectively killing the creature and completing his second task. Number 15. Mares of Diomedes. The mares of Diomedes, also called mares of Thrace, were a herd of man-eating horses in Greek mythology, belonging to the giant Diomedes. Diomedes was one of the bloodiest and most feared kings. He was the son of Ares, the god of war, and as he was the living personification of brutality, violence, tumult, and confusion. He lived on the shore of the Black Sea, from where he ruled the warrior tribe of the Bistons. But their most precious asset, their great treasure, were 4 wild mares that they cared for as if they were their daughters. The mares, which were the terror of the Thracian region, were kept tied with iron chains to a bronze manger and were called Podargos, the swift one, Lampon, the bright one, Xanthos, the yellow one, and Deinos, the terrible one. Heracles defeated these monsters in the 8th labor of him and fed the mares with Diomedes, his own master. Number 16. Cerberus. Cerberus is a popular creature in ancient mythology. Hades' loyal watchdog, Cerberus, was a massive 3-headed hound that guarded the entrance to the underworld. The beast was said to only have an appetite for living flesh, and would therefore only allow departed spirits through, while consuming any living mortal foolish enough to come near it. It is said that the 3 heads were meant to symbolize the past, present, and future. In other versions of the myth, the 3 heads represent youth, adulthood, and old age. While Cerberus was a remarkable creature of mythology, he is probably best remembered as the 12th and final labor that Heracles most often performed. Heracles must enter the underworld, fight the beast without using weapons, and then bring Cerberus to the surface world, alive, to present him to the Mycenaean king Eurystheus, the man who originally ordered Heracles to perform these tasks as a reward for his sins. Heracles manages to board the beast. Then, using his great strength, he throws the animal over his shoulder and drags it into the mortal world. It is said that upon seeing Cerberus, Eurystheus was so terrified that he hid himself in a large vase and begged Heracles to return the hellhound to Hades. Number 17. Nemean lion. The Nemean lion was the same as the Hydra, son of Typhoon and Echidna. His claws were sharper than any deadly sword, and his glowing skin was impenetrable armor. He also had great strength. This monster lived in the lands of Argolide, near the Nemean hills. Legend has it that he kidnapped defenseless women and took them to his cave, attracting the knights who dared to rescue them. It is said that when they arrived at their cave, they saw an injured woman, and when she approached, she transformed into a lion, who killed them and offered their bones to Hades. This beast was finally slain by Heracles in his first of the 12 labors. Since then, the great hero has worn the lion's skin as a helmet. Number 18. Stymphalian birds. Stymphalian birds are man-eating birds with bronze beaks, sharp metallic feathers that can hurl poisonous dung at their victims. According to Greek mythology, these flying creatures were raised by the god of war, Ares, or were pets of the goddess of the hunt, Artemis. They reproduced rapidly and swarmed across the countryside, destroying crops and terrorizing people. Heracles defeated these creatures in the 6th labor of him, shooting arrows tipped with poisonous blood from the slain monster, Lernaean Hydra. Birds that attack people are generally considered scary on their own, but these birds very specifically liked to eat people, which is terrifying. However, the real problem is that the bird's feathers were made of bronze, razor sharp, and could be shot at people. These weren't birds to scare away, unless you also wanted your hand to be crushed into confetti of bloody meat. Number 19. Erymanthian boar. In Greek mythology, the Erymanthian boar was a mythical creature that took the form of a furry, untamed boar with great weight and foam-filled jaws. He would emerge from the thick, cypress-clad heights of Erymanthus to haunt the groves of Arcady and abuse the land of Sophis. Hercules was once again the hero to defeat this monster also in his fourth labor. In order to capture the boar, Hercules first chased after it with shouts and then led the exhausted creature into the deep snow. He then caught him and tied him up with chains. Number 20. Minotaur. The Minotaur is one of the most fascinating monsters in Greek mythology. With the body of a man and the head of a bull, his name means Bull of Minos. He was the son of Persephone and the Cretan bull. Minos, son of Zeus, asked Poseidon for help so that his people would make him king of Crete after the death of Asterion. Poseidon agreed and brought back from the seas a beautiful white bull, which Minos promised to sacrifice in his name. But Minos was amazed by the beauty of the bull and sacrificed a different one in its place, hoping to trick Poseidon. This enraged Poseidon, and in revenge he awakened desire in Persephone, wife of Minos, telling her to have a son with the white bull, which resulted in the Minotaur. The Minotaur became violent as he got older, so Minos built a labyrinth and locked the Minotaur in it. The Minotaur is best remembered for his affinity for devouring flesh and his cryptic home deep within the confines of the twisting labyrinth. The labyrinth was an impossible place built by the inventor Daedalus. It is said to have been located under the palace of Knossos, the home of King Minos of Crete. The story goes that King Minos, the ruler of Crete, lost his son Androgeus when the boy was murdered in Athens. Accounts vary, but one version says that the prince was assassinated because the Athenians were jealous of his many victories at the recent Panathenaic Games in Athens. Subsequently, King Minos would wage war on the Athenians and finally find victory. As penance for the murder of Androgeus, every year the Athenians were forced to send 7 young men and 7 maidens to the island of Crete, where they would be released into the labyrinth and systematically hunted down and eaten by the Minotaur. It is at this time that Theseus, the hero of Athens, volunteers to be sent to Crete as a sacrifice to the monster. Upon arrival, Theseus is helped by Ariadne, the daughter of King Minos. Before the Athenians can be trapped inside the labyrinth, Ariadne frees Theseus from her holding cell and leads him to the entrance of the great labyrinth. Theseus ventures into the labyrinth and discovers the Minotaur sleeping in the center of the great dungeon. Using the element of surprise, Theseus attacks the Minotaur and dispenses with the monster with ease. The hero and the other Athenians, along with Princess Ariadne, escape Minos's palace and quickly retreat to Athens under cover of night. Number 21. Python. He was born by Gaia from the mud of Deucalion's deluge, with which Zeus ended the Golden Age. It was a dragon or snake of impressive size that guarded the Oracle of Delphi. He died after an epic fight against Apollo, who for this took possession of the oracle and gave the priestess the name of Pythia. Among the reasons for the death of Python at the hands of Apollo, we must also consider a possible revenge of Apollo towards the snake, which before the birth of the god, followed the mother of Apollo to the island of Delos. Number 22. The Dragon of Colchis. The Colchia dragon in Greek mythology was a giant fire-breathing serpent that guarded the Golden Fleece. The Golden Fleece was the prize sought by the Greek hero Jason and his crew of Argonauts. With the help of the witch Medea, Jason managed to defeat the guardian monster and take the fleece. The witch put him to sleep, and the hero left him alone or killed him. Dragons were common creatures in Greek mythology. In addition to the Colchian dragon and Python, another famous monster was Ladon. This creature was a serpentine dragon that coiled and twisted around the tree in the garden of the Hesperides, protecting the golden apples. According to one version of the myth, Hercules killed the monster with a bow and arrow when he came to collect the golden apples in his 11th labor. Number 23. Pegasus. A beautiful white horse with large wings. It was the horse of Zeus and was born from the blood of Medusa when Perseus cut off her head. Pegasus is a noble and intelligent horse, and he does not allow himself to be ridden by just anyone. Only those with a good heart can ride Pegasus, as he is able to sense the evil that lurks behind people's intentions. Pegasus is one of the creatures from Greek mythology that has been widely featured in film and television, becoming a symbol of honor in many stories. Number 24. Griffin. This mythological creature takes the hybrid form of an eagle and a lion, combining its meanings fierce and brave into one being. They usually roamed in packs and were difficult to tame. However, the demigods were able to tame them, and under them, they became loyal. They feed on the meat of horses. A myth tells the story of Apollo, who went in search of griffins and returned to Greece mounted on a hydra. The hydra took care of him and watched over his treasures. Number 25. The Cyclops. The Cyclopes were primordial giants that were said to have been born from Gaia, the earth. They were said to possess great strength and ferocity, with a bulging eye protruding from their forehead. Fearing his power, the Cyclops were thrown into the pits of Tartarus by their father Urano. The monsters remained imprisoned when the Titan Cronus overthrew Uranus and took his place as ruler of the universe. It was only when the Olympians rose to power that the Cyclops found freedom. The mighty Zeus unleashed the monsters, who in turn would make lightning bolts for the young Olympian. Perhaps the most famous story involving a Cyclops involves Odysseus and his woeful journeys. In Book 9 of the Odyssey, Odysseus and his crew find themselves trapped in the cave of the mighty Cyclops Polyphemus. The monster blocks his escape and devours the flesh of its captives day after day. Known for his cunning, Odysseus devises a plan to escape. Odysseus offers Polyphemus the wine that the traveler brought from his ship. The Cyclops turns himself in and is soon very drunk. Feeling joyful, Polyphemus the monster asks the man his name. Odysseus replies that his name is No One. When Polyphemus falls asleep from intoxication, Odysseus and his men blind the Cyclops by stabbing him in the eye with a sharp staff. Polyphemus, now enraged, yells at the other Cyclops on the island that nobody has blinded him. Odysseus and his men escape from the monster's cave by joining the underbelly of the numerous sheep that Polyphemus herds. Now completely blind, the monster feels the animals' backs as they go out to graze. The Cyclops is unaware that his captives are escaping silently, hiding under his herd. As Odysseus sails away, he boasts to the defeated monster, who in turn attempts to sink the man's ship by throwing rocks off a high cliff. Number 26. Centaur. A centaur is a creature that is half man and half horse. Centaurs have the head, arms, and torso of a man and the body and legs of a horse. The centaurs lived in the mountains of Thessaly, along with the Lapitas, with whom they maintained a constant war, because the centaurs wanted to kidnap Hippodamia, the beautiful wife of King Pirithous. King Pirithous celebrated his wedding with a great banquet and invited all the inhabitants of the region, including the centaurs. But the centaurs had never tasted wine. So when they got drunk, they wanted to kidnap Hippodamia, as well as other banquet attendees. This event later resulted in a war that was won by the Lapitas. I know that I have said that there would be 26 creatures in this top, but we are going to see one more. If you have come this far, I imagine that you will have liked the video. Give it a like, comment to suggest new videos, or to say what you think of this one. Subscribe and activate notifications. For me, it is a great help. Number 27. The Furies. When the Titan Kronos castrated his father Urano and threw his penis into the sea, as is done, the drops of blood that fell to the ground became the Furies. Having been born of blood from severed genitalia, it was reasonable to expect that the Furies were not in a good mood. They spent their time finding the people who had done wrong and tormenting them to a horrifying death, mainly by lashing them repeatedly with their flails. It's true that the Furies are more goddesses than monsters, but since many stories describe them as having the heads of dogs, snakes for hair, hind wings, and coal-black bodies, I was willing to make an exception. The Erinyes are primitive forces prior to the Olympian gods, so they do not submit to the authority of Zeus. They lived in Erebus, or in Tartarus according to other traditions, from which they only returned to Earth to punish living criminals. During their stay in the underworld, they subjected the eternally condemned to endless torture. Despite their divine ancestry, the gods of Olympus show a deep revulsion mixed with awe towards these beings and do not tolerate them. For their part, mortals fear them terribly and flee from them. When we think of Greek mythology, creatures such as centaurs or mermaids usually occupy the first places in our minds. But what about those creatures that have remained in the shadows of the most popular myths? In this video, I bring you 10 creatures of Greek mythology that few know about. Number 1. Scolopendra. The scolopendra is a monstrous sea creature with parts of different animals. Its body is composed of numerous segments, similar to a gigantic centipede, and each segment is equipped with appendages or legs that allow it to move quickly and fluidly, both in water and on land. It has enormous jaws full of sharp teeth, capable of tearing its prey with ease. Its skin is thick and scaly, providing protection against attacks and making it difficult to capture or kill. It can vary in color, from dark tones to more striking colors. Its eyes are bright and capable of seeing into the dark depths of the ocean, where it resides and only occasionally emerges to attack ships and sailors. Its presence on the surface is a sign of impending disaster, as it is extremely aggressive and territorial, attacking any intruder that enters its domain. It uses its multiple legs and jaws to capture and devour its victims, and like real centipedes, the mythological scolopendra is depicted as venomous, capable of killing not only with its jaws, but also with its venom. Number 2. Arimaspi. The Arimaspi have a unique appearance, each possessing a single eye in the center of the forehead, similar to the Cyclops. They are fierce warriors, with strong and muscular bodies, always armed and ready for battle. They are rough and wild, with long hair and untidy beards, a reflection of their life of constant struggle and survival in inhospitable regions. They inhabit the margins of the known world, in the remote and mountainous regions of the far north, beyond the lands of the Scythians. These brave warriors are known for their prowess in battle. They are not afraid to face formidable enemies, and their obsession with gold and riches leads them to continually clash with griffins. According to legend, the griffins guard enormous treasures of gold in the mountains, and the Arimaspi, attracted by these riches, are constantly trying to steal the gold. Number 3. Myrmidons. Hera, queen of the gods, sent a plague to kill all the human inhabitants of Aegina because the island was named after one of Zeus's mistresses. King Aeacus, son of Zeus and intended target of Hera, along with his mother, prayed to his father to find a way to repopulate the island. As the Myrmidons, the ants of the island, were not affected by the disease, Zeus responded by transforming them into a race of men, the Myrmidons. They were as fierce and resilient as the ants, and like the ants, they have absolute loyalty. They follow their leader with unwavering devotion, making them a formidable force in battle. After their transformation, Myrmidons presented themselves as robust, strong, and disciplined men. Their appearance is that of well-trained warriors with athletic bodies. Due to their ant origins, they wear brown armor and maintain strict organization and discipline. They are known for their ability to act together, moving and fighting with almost superhuman precision. In combat, they are courageous and skilled warriors. Their rigorous training and cohesion as a unit allow them to outmaneuver their enemies on numerous occasions. But if the Myrmidons are famous for anything, it is for their role in the Trojan War, where they fought under the command of Achilles. Number 4. Ichthyocentaurs. Ichthyocentaurs are creatures that combine parts of humans, horses, and fish. Their upper body is that of a human, with a male torso and head. They also have human arms that can wield tridents, seashells, or fishing nets. The middle part of their body is that of a horse, similar to centaurs. This includes the front legs of a horse. The lower part of the body ends in a large, scaly fishtail, similar to that of a mermaid. This tail allows them to move nimbly and quickly in the water. And as sea creatures, they are excellent swimmers. These creatures are associated with the gods of the sea, especially Poseidon. They are their servants or companions, helping to control the waters and protect sea creatures. One of the most famous stories about the ichthyocentaurs is their appearance in the myth of the birth of Aphrodite, Bythos, and Aphros. They assisted the goddess when she emerged from the sea foam and guided her to the shore. They also act as guides and protectors of sailors. They help lost sailors find their way back to dry land and protect ships from storms and the dangers of the sea. Number 5. Argos Panoptes. Argos Panoptes, also known as Argos of the 100 Eyes, appears in several legends of Greek mythology. His name, Panoptes, means the all-seeing one. Argos Panoptes is famous for being a tireless watchman and for his unique appearance that distinguishes him from other mythological creatures, as he has 100 eyes spread throughout his body. Thanks to these eyes, he can maintain constant vigilance, for while some of his eyes sleep, others remain open, ensuring that he is always vigilant. Despite his many eyes, Argus has a humanoid form. He is the perfect guardian. In addition to his watchfulness, Argus is strong and loyal, devotedly fulfilling the tasks given to him by the gods, though he is especially loyal to the goddess Hera. His most famous story is when he acted as guardian of Io, a priestess of Hera, who was transformed into a white cow. Hera, suspecting Zeus' infidelity, assigned Argus to guard Io and make sure she did not escape or be released by Zeus. Zeus, wishing to free Io, sent Hermes to rescue her. Hermes, disguised as a shepherd, played music and told stories to lull the 100 eyes of Argus. Once all the eyes were closed, Hermes killed Argus and freed Io. As a tribute to her faithful guardian, Hera took the 100 eyes of Argus and placed them in the feathers of the peacock, her sacred bird. Number 6. Mormo. Mormo, a creature associated with witchcraft, specters, and night terrors, is a monstrous and demonic creature with a deformed face, sharp fangs, and glowing eyes full of evil. In addition, it can have animal features such as claws, bat wings, or goat legs. And to make it even more interesting, in some versions, Mormo has the ability to change shape, adopting different appearances to deceive and terrorize its victims. This creature is linked to witchcraft and dark magical practices. She is considered a follower of Hecate, the goddess of sorcery and dark ways, acting as her servant or auxiliary spirit. Mormo is known to instill fear, especially in children. In many tales, she is described as a creature that lurks in the night, similar to the bogeyman or bogeyman in other mythologies. Greek mothers told stories of Mormo to frighten their children and keep them obedient, warning them that the creature would come to take them away if they did not behave. Furthermore, in some legends, she is described as a vengeful spirit that seeks to punish mortals for their mistakes and sins. It feeds on the fear and despair of its victims. Number 7. Ophiutorus. The Ophiutorus is a hybrid creature with a body that combines a bull and a snake. Its upper body is that of a bull, with a robust, strong, and muscular torso covered with thick fur. It has prominent horns and a full bull's head, with large eyes and muzzle. The lower part of its body is a long snake tail that extends from the torso of the bull. This tail is scaly and can move with the flexibility and agility of a snake. Although not described as aggressive, Ophiutorus will defend itself fiercely if attacked. It is a solitary creature that inhabits remote and difficult-to-reach regions. It prefers to live in the solitude of mountains or deep forests. According to myth, it was believed that whoever sacrificed and burned its entrails would gain the power to defeat the gods. This incredible ability made it highly sought after, but also extremely dangerous. The best-known story of the Ophiutorus involves Prometheus. During the Titanomachy, the great war between the Titans and the Olympian gods, Prometheus attempted to sacrifice the Ophiutorus to obtain this divine power. However, his plan was foiled, and he never succeeded in completing the sacrifice. Number 8. Cercopes. These creatures, also known as Cercopi or Kerkopes, are known for their mischievousness and their ability to get into trouble. They were accomplished liars, cheats, and rascals. Their story is full of humor, mischief, and lessons. Cercopes are humanoid-shaped creatures. They are small, human-like, but with a more rustic appearance, messy hair, a scraggly beard, and plain clothes made of coarse fur or fabrics. They are not exactly the kind of characters you would expect to see in a king's court. These little creatures are famous for their mischief and trickery skills. They love to tease travelers, steal from them, and cause trouble wherever they go. They have a mischievous nature, using their wits to get out of sticky situations and trick their enemies. It is not surprising that they especially enjoy challenging authority, mocking the powerful, and, in particular, the heroes who cross their path. One of the best-known stories about the Cercopes is their encounter with Hercules, the famous Greek hero. Pasalus and Acmon attempted to rob Hercules while he slept, but of course, it didn't work out well for them. Hercules captured them and, in an act that shows both his strength and his sense of humor, tied them upside down to a pole and carried them dangling over his shoulders. The Cercopes, instead of crying or lamenting, they began to mock Hercules, making jokes about his hairy ass. This kind of insolence is exactly what defines the Cercopes. And instead of getting angry, Hercules, amused by their audacity, decided to set them free. However, not all stories of the Cercopes have such a light-hearted ending. In some versions of the myth, their constant mischief and trickery finally exhausted Zeus's patience. Tired of their constant trouble, Zeus transformed them into monkeys as punishment. Number 9. Cetus. This giant sea monster is an archetypal representation of the dangers and mysteries of the ocean, a force of nature that reflects the ancient Greeks' fear of the unknown and uncontrollable sea. Cetus has an appearance that leaves no doubt about its monstrous nature. It is a creature of colossal size, much larger than any known sea creature. Its wingspan is such that it can cause immense destruction both at sea and on the coasts. With a body that combines a sea serpent and a whale. It can have scales, a rough skin, fins, or tails that allow it to move quickly through the water. In addition, its appearance is even more terrifying thanks to its huge jaws full of sharp teeth, capable of devouring boats and people with chilling ease. In some depictions, Cetus has draconic features, such as horns or spines. As a sea creature, it is associated with the depths and mysteries of the ocean. Cetus is known for its aggressiveness and its ability to destroy everything in its path. This creature is sent by the gods as a punishment, a manifestation of divine wrath, destined to punish those who have offended the immortals, a reminder of the power of the gods and the consequences of defying their authority. In one of the myths, the princess Andromeda was chained to a rock as a sacrifice to the creature. Just as Cetus was about to devour Andromeda, Perseus arrives, who bravely kills the monster and frees the princess, taking her as his wife. In another myth, Hercules confronts Cetus to save Hesione, the daughter of the king of Troy. Similar to the story of Perseus, Hesione was to be sacrificed to Cetus to appease the gods. Hercules succeeds in slaying the monster and saves the princess. Number 10. Aloidae. The Aloidae, or Aloidas, were two giant brothers who were not content to live under the shadow of the gods and decided it was time to take control. The protagonists of this story are Oto and Ephialtes, sons of Poseidon and Iphimedea. From the beginning, the Aloids were noted for their impressive appearance. They were two young giants with huge, muscular bodies, far beyond the size of any human. But unlike other giants we usually imagine as monstrous creatures, Oto and Ephialtes were also young and attractive, with well-defined human features. The strength of these giants was legendary. It was said that they could move mountains and unearth islands as easily as you or I would move a stone. But their ambition was as great as their strength. They were not content to simply be the strongest. They wanted more. Their ultimate goal was to overthrow the gods of Olympus and establish their dominion over the entire universe. And they weren't just muscle, they were also cunning and determined. Their plan was ambitious, to pile up mountains to reach Olympus. They placed Mount Ossa on top of Mount Pelion. And their goal? To kidnap Hera and Artemis, two of the most powerful goddesses, and thus prove their supremacy. But defying the gods doesn't end well. Before they could complete their colossal task, Apollo intervened and killed them. According to another version of their struggle against the Olympians, they managed to kidnap Ares and hold him in a bronze vessel for 13 months, and that would have been the end of Ares if the beautiful Erebea, the stepmother of the young giants, had not told Hermes what they had done. Alerted by Erebea, Hermes rescued Ares. Another version of the myth about the death of the giants tells us that Artemis deceived them by taking them to the island of Naxos. There, she transformed herself into a deer and placed herself among them. The brothers, in their eagerness to hunt her, threw their spears at the same time and killed each other. And as if death were not punishment enough, the brothers were sent to Tartarus, the deepest underworld, where they were bound with snakes on a pillar as eternal punishment for their audacity. The gods with their power are already formidable entities, but what happens when these divinities are granted weapons and relics of unimaginable powers? In this video, we will discover the most powerful mystical objects in Greek mythology. Number 1. The Helm of Darkness. The history of the Helm of Hades dates back to the tumultuous era of the Titanomachy, an epic war between gods and titans for control of the cosmos. It was in this time of chaos and conflict, when the gods of Olympus were fighting for their survival against the ancient Titans, that the Helm of Darkness, also known as the Helm of Hades, was born. Hephaestus, the master of the forge, a god known for his unparalleled craftsmanship and his skill in creating divine artifacts, was the one who forged the helmet. His ingenuity and skill were tested to the fullest as he worked the divine metal under the roar of his hammer. Each blow, each fold of the material, infused more and more of his divinity, until finally, the Helm of Darkness was born. He was given to the Cyclopes, one-eyed beings known for their enormous strength and legendary endurance. It was the Cyclops who, under the direction of Hephaestus, completed the job and imbued it with his dark magic, endowing it with his famous power, the ability to grant its wielder perfect invisibility. The Helm of Darkness was gifted to Hades, the lord of the underworld, as part of divine spoils after the gods finally defeated the Titans. With this powerful artifact, Hades could reign over his shadowy realm in complete safety, unseen by the countless souls under his command. The darkness became his shield and his sword, allowing him to move undetected by friend or foe. The helmet also became a valuable tool on the rare occasions when Hades had to leave his underground domain. The power of the helm allowed him to move among mortals and other gods undetected, influencing events from the shadows and leaving his mark on the world of the living without anyone knowing of his presence. Number 2. Hippolyta's belt. The belt of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons, is an object of great relevance in Greek mythology. In reality, the belt is believed to have been more likely a shield or military sash, a symbol of power and authority that Hippolyta, as leader of the Amazons, wore with pride. The Amazons were a tribe of female warriors, famous for their bravery and skills in battle, who lived in a matriarchal society and where men were relegated to secondary roles. This belt of power, woven of gold and studded with jewels, was not only a demonstration of Hippolyta's majesty and status, but also an emblem of her strength and martial skill, worthy of a leader whose reign was marked by courage and the bravery. The history of Hippolyta's belt is intertwined with the legend of Hercules and his famous 12 labors. Well, you know, Hercules is the name given to him in Rome and Heracles in Greece. But since he is better known as Hercules, I will use that name. And by the way, if you want to see the history of his 12 labors, go to the channel. The 9th of these labors required Hercules to steal Hippolyta's belt to give it to King Eurystheus's daughter. Hercules, armed with his cunning and his superhuman strength, embarked on his journey to the kingdom of the Amazons. The story differs in some accounts, but the most common version says that Hercules was received friendly by Hippolyta, who was impressed by his strength and bravery. However, the peaceful interaction descended into chaos when Hera, in her constant animosity towards Hercules, disguised her appearance and infiltrated the Amazons, spreading rumors that Hercules intended to kidnap his queen. In the ensuing confrontation, Hercules was forced to fight the Amazons, and during the fight, he killed Hippolyta, taking her belt from her. He managed to escape and return to his homeland, thus completing his 9th job. Number 3. Lyre of Orpheus. The Lyre of Orpheus is one of the most emblematic relics of Greek mythology. This lyre was no ordinary object, but a divine instrument, imbued with a wondrous and fascinating power that transcended the human world. The story begins with Orpheus, the son of the muse Calliope, and according to some versions, of the god Apollo. His father gave him the lyre and taught him how to play it. But it was not just the teaching of a father that allowed Orpheus to create heavenly music. The lyre itself was a divine object, a gift from the gods, created by Hermes himself and perfected by Apollo. Orpheus's lyre was a magical instrument whose music could not only move humans, but also nature and mythical creatures. Orpheus could make trees dance, rivers change course, and wild beasts become docile. Orpheus's lyre is particularly famous for its role in Orpheus's attempt to rescue his wife Eurydice from the underworld. Orpheus played his lyre with such sadness and beauty that even the hard hearts of Hades and Persephone softened, and they allowed Eurydice to follow Orpheus back to the world of the living, as long as he did not look back until they were both out of the underworld. The music of Orpheus's lyre symbolizes beauty, passion, and the power of art to move hearts and minds, and even challenge the gods. Number 4. Trident of Poseidon. The trident of Poseidon, a transcendental weapon in Greek mythology, is the very embodiment of the dominion of Poseidon, the god of the sea, over waters and earthquakes. This divine artifact, more than being a simple weapon, is an emblem of authority and power that reflects the unleashed force of the seas and oceans. Conceived deep within the divine forges of the Cyclops, the trident was a gift to Poseidon during the war against the Titans. Forged from the most robust and sacred metals and imbued with the maritime powers of divinity, the trident embodies the majesty and terror of the deep sea. The shape of the trident with its 3 points symbolizes many triumvirates in Greek mythology, but is most commonly associated with Poseidon's rule over 3/4 of the world, the oceans surrounding the earth. Poseidon wielded it to cause storms and earthquakes, sink ships, and control sea beasts. It was said that by striking the ground with his trident, Poseidon could make springs of salt water emerge. The trident is a physical manifestation of the irrepressible power of the sea. When Poseidon shakes the trident at him, the oceans stir, the waves rise, and the seas part before him. Likewise, when he slams it into the earth itself shakes, showing Poseidon's connection to earthquakes. One of the most famous stories involving the trident is the dispute between Poseidon and Athena over the city of Athens. Both gods offered a gift to the city, and the god with the most useful gift would become the city's patron. Poseidon struck the earth with his trident, and a spring of salt water gushed out of it. Although it was an impressive sight, the salt water was of no use to the city's inhabitants. Athena, on the other hand, introduced the olive tree, which provided food, oil, and wood. Athena was chosen as the patron saint of the city, which was named after her ever since. Number 5. Theseus of Dionysus. In the pantheon of Greek deities, Dionysus, the god of wine and divine madness, carried a symbol of his power, the Theseus. The history of this sacred object is intertwined with the life of its owner, embodying the wild energy and intoxicating euphoria that Dionysus unleashed in mortals and gods alike. In ancient Greece, when the gods walked among men and the mysteries of life were dictated by divine whims, Dionysus, born of the mortal Semele and the almighty Zeus, was a god like no other. He did not have a palace on Mount Olympus. He preferred to wander the mortal world, bringing with him the joy of wine and the release of Dionysian ecstasy. Among the sacred objects of Dionysus, the Theseus was the most emblematic. It was not a simple staff, but a staff crowned with a pine cone, wrapped in ivy and sometimes tangled with ribbons. It was a representation of fertility and vegetation, as well as transformation and liberation. The Theseus was more than a symbol. It was an extension of Dionysus's power. When he brandished it at the bacchanals, the frenetic celebrations in honor of the god, the participants found themselves thrown into a state of ecstasy, freed from their inhibitions and given over to dance and wild joy. The energy of the Theseus was such that the mere sight of Dionysus brandishing it could unleash divine madness, causing men to forget their duties and women to abandon their looms to join the god's frenetic dance. But the Theseus also had a darker side. It represented the duality of Dionysus, the balance between euphoria and madness, joy and terror. Those who rejected or insulted Dionysus found that the Theseus could be a weapon, a tool of punishment for those who did not respect the rites and festivities of the god of wine. Thus, the Theseus of Dionysus became a legend, an object of desire, fear, and reverence. Like its owner, it was wild and free, capable of unleashing the deepest passion and the most absolute terror. Over the centuries, his story has been told and retold, a reminder of the irrepressible energy and divine madness that Dionysus brings to the mortal world. Number 6. Thunderbolt of Zeus. Zeus's lightning bolt is, without a doubt, one of the most powerful and symbolic objects in Greek mythology. It is not simply a weapon, it is the pure manifestation of the supremacy of Zeus, the god of the sky and the king of all gods. The lightning bolt, also known as the divine radiance, was forged deep within the earth by the 3 Cyclops, Bronte, Steropes, and Arges, as a gift of gratitude to Zeus for freeing them from the prison in which their father Uranus had locked them up. Composed of the pure energy of the storm, this fearsome weapon not only represents the authority of Zeus, but also embodies his dominion over the sky and the weather. The form and power of the lightning bolt are symbolic representations of the wrath and justice of Zeus. When he wields it, the sky darkens, thunder rolls, and lightning illuminates the sky, announcing his wrath and his might. The fearsome electrical storms are the expression of his divine will, and the lightning bolts are the arrows with which he punishes the disobedient and the wicked. Greek myths are filled with tales of Zeus using his thunderbolt to deliver justice. He used it to defeat the Titans in the Titanic War and to punish Prometheus for stealing fire and giving it to humans. In the hands of Zeus, the lightning bolt is not only a fearsome weapon, but also a tool of justice, used to maintain order and balance in the cosmos. Number 7. Thread of life of the Moirai. Few entities were as respected and even feared as the Moirai. Also known as the Fates in Roman mythology, these three sisters, Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos, wove the destiny of every mortal and divine being. Clotho, the youngest of the sisters, spun the thread of life on her spinning wheel. The length and quality of the thread determined the length and nature of each individual's life. With each turn of her spinning wheel, Clotho gave life to the newborns, weaving grandiose destinies for some and modest ones for others, without distinction of race or status. Lachesis, the middle sister, measured the thread. With her staff, she marked the important events in each being's life, as well as the duration of his existence. Lachesis's decisions were fair and impartial, no matter how many pleas or promises were made to her. Finally, there was Atropos, the oldest and most feared of the sisters. With her sharp scissors, she cut the thread of life, determining the end of each existence. Her decision was irrevocable. Once she decided to cut the thread, nothing and no one could prevent death. The thread of life of the Moirai was more than just a representation of an individual's existence. It was a manifestation of his destiny, every detail of his life carefully woven, measured, and cut by the sisters. From the humblest peasant to the greatest of gods, all were subject to the will of the fates. If you thought your love life was complicated, wait until you hear about the Greek gods. In this video, we will discover the most daring and lustful divinities of ancient times. Of course, before starting, I remind you that, as in all myths, there are always variations and differences, so just enjoy the video. We begin. Number 1. Zeus. Zeus is not only the king of the gods and goddesses of Greek mythology, he is also the king of perverts, and deserves by far the number 1 position. The list of his love conquests is long and extensive, but I will try to be as brief as possible. Zeus's first wife was Metis, a titaness, and the goddess of wisdom and cunning. According to a prophecy of that time, Zeus would lose his kingdom to his first descendant, so he decided to swallow Metis when she became pregnant with Athena, goddess of wisdom. Zeus then married the slender Themis, the titan of justice, who gave birth to him the Houri and the Fates. In the end, Zeus chose Hera, who was his sister and the goddess of marriage, to become his wife. Together, Zeus and Hera had 4 children. However, Zeus remained obsessed with love affairs even after his marriage, constantly deceiving Hera. His love affairs outraged his wife Hera, who constantly sought revenge. In one of his efforts to hide his infidelity to Hera, Zeus transformed his lover Io into a white cow. However, Hera, suspicious of her husband, asked for the cow as a gift. Once she had Io in her possession, Hera set Argus, a giant with 100 eyes, to watch over her. Zeus commissioned Hermes to rescue his beloved. She guided him transformed into a bird to the tree where Argus had her tied, and Hermes put the guardian to sleep with her flute. Then, Hermes killed Argus. Gives according to myth, Zeus was captivated by Leda's beauty and appeared before her in the form of a swan. He then seduces her, or does it to her without her consent, and gets her pregnant. From their union, 2 sets of twins were born, one of them being Helen of Troy, famous for being the cause of the Trojan conflict. Chryseis, the king of Argos, locked his daughter Danae in a tower or underground chamber because of a prophecy that he would be killed by her grandson. Zeus, ever resourceful, transformed himself into a shower of gold that fell on Danae, and from this unusual union Perseus was born, who would eventually fulfill the prophecy. Zeus was attracted to Europa, a Phoenician princess. To approach her undetected, he transformed into a majestic white bull. Europe was intrigued by this gentle bull, who carried her to Crete on his back, where he revealed her true identity. Europa became queen of Crete, and from her union with Zeus, 3 children were born, among them Minos. Callisto was one of the nymphs who followed Artemis. Zeus was attracted to Callisto and disguised himself as Artemis to get closer to her. In some versions, he disguises himself as Apollo. When Callisto became pregnant and gave birth to Arcas, Artemis became angry, which she considered a violation of her vow of chastity, and transformed Callisto into a bear. Later, Arcas, not knowing that the bear was her mother, was about to kill her. To avoid tragedy, Zeus transformed both into constellations, the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper. Ganymede was a Trojan prince of extraordinary beauty. Zeus, delighted with him, kidnapped him, took the form of an eagle and took him to Mount Olympus, who made him his lover and cupbearer of the gods. It is also said that Zeus turned it into the constellation Aquarius. Semele was a mortal princess with whom Zeus had an affair. Hera, jealous as always, devised a plan. Disguised as an old woman, she convinced Semele to ask Zeus to show himself to her in all his divine glory, knowing that no mortal could endure such a sight. Zeus, bound by a promise he had made to Semele, reluctantly agreed. Revealing herself in her true form, Semele was consumed by divine radiance. However, Zeus managed to save the son he was carrying, Dionysus, who would later become the god of wine, fun, and one of the great members of this list, as we will see later. Zeus was captivated by Alcmene, Amphitryon's wife. To get closer to her, he took the form of her husband while he was away on a military expedition. Zeus spent the night with Alcmene and extended the length of that night so that it lasted the equivalent of 3 normal nights. From her union with Zeus, Alcmene became pregnant with Hercules, Heracles in Greek. At the same time, Amphitryon returned and also conceived a son with Alcmene. Therefore, she gave birth to 2 sons, one mortal, Iphicles, and one divine, Hercules. Antiope, daughter of the river Asopus, was seduced by Zeus when he took the form of a satyr. She became pregnant with twins, Amphion and Zeto. Leto, a Titaness, attracted the attention of Zeus and became pregnant with twins, Apollo and Artemis. Hera, jealous as always, chased Leto throughout the land to prevent her from giving birth anywhere. Leto found refuge on the floating island of Delos, where she gave birth to her 2 divine children. Despite the difficulties, Apollo and Artemis became 2 of the most revered Olympian gods. Taygete was one of the Pleiades, daughters of the Titan Atlas and the sea nymph Pleione. Zeus chased Taygete, but to avoid him, she transformed into a deer. Despite her efforts, Zeus found her and seduced her. From their union, Lacedaemon was born, who would later found the city of Sparta. Number 2, Poseidon, the friend of the dolphins and the whales, who swims and plays with them, but who also has a dark side, not like deep, and his love for the sea, but almost. Poseidon, one of the most prominent gods of Olympus, had many encounters and relationships in Greek mythology, producing a multitude of descendants, both divine and mortal. Amphitrite was one of the Nereids, and according to legend, when Poseidon saw her for the first time, he fell deeply in love with her. Amphitrite attempted to flee from him, but was eventually persuaded by a dolphin to accept Poseidon's advances. They married and she became queen of the sea alongside Poseidon. According to some versions of the myth, Medusa was a beautiful priestess of the temple of Athena. Poseidon pursued her and eventually seduced her, or according to other interpretations, he did so without her consent, in the temple of Athena. As a consequence, Athena transformed Medusa into a monster with snakes for hair, thus punishing her, while Poseidon suffered no repercussions. While Poseidon pursued Demeter, who was not interested in him, she attempted to elude him by transforming into a mare and mixing with a group of horses. However, Poseidon, realizing this, decided to transform himself into a stallion and followed her. From their union, 2 descendants were born, a horse named Arion and a mysterious goddess, whose name was not openly mentioned, but who is generally known as Despoina, meaning the young lady. Barbaro, daughter of Aphrodite and Adonis, was the object of affection of both Poseidon and Dionysus. Finally, Baro chose Poseidon, and together they had a daughter. Amymone was one of the daughters of Danaus. Poseidon helped her find water during a drought and later became her lover. From their union, Nafplius was born. This princess was in love with the Olympian river. Poseidon, taking advantage of this fact, took the form of the river and seduced Tyre. From this union, the twins Peleus and Neleus were born, who would later become important figures in other Greek myths. It is also worth highlighting various meetings with Alcyone, Cyrene, Lapite, and finally Caeneus was a woman named Canis who was seduced by Poseidon, although most versions agree that she did it without her consent. After this, Poseidon offered her a wish as compensation. Canis requested to become an invulnerable man, never to be wronged again, and Poseidon granted her wish, transforming her into Caeneus. Not only did she grant him that wish, but she also gave him impenetrable skin that made him invulnerable. Pan is the god of shepherds, nature, and music in Greek mythology. In Roman mythology, this god is identified as a faun. He is also known for his impulsive love behavior and antics. Pan fell in love with the nymph Syrinx, but she did not share his feelings and fled from him. To escape her pursuit, Syrinx asked for help and was transformed into a set of reeds. Pan, upon finding the reeds and not being able to find the nymph, joined them together and created the Syrinx, or Pan's flute, which became one of his most recognized attributes. Pan also fell in love with Echo, another nymph, but she rejected him. Hurt to her pride, Pan made some shepherds angry to the point of dismembering Echo. Okay, maybe this god didn't have much success in his love conquests, but the poor guy tried. Number 4. Dionysus. Dionysus, like other Greek gods, had numerous loves and encounters with mortals and divinities. After Theseus abandoned Ariadne on the island of Naxos, Dionysus found her and fell in love with her. He took her with him, and according to some accounts, he made her immortal. They had several children together. You could say that this was his wife or one of his great loves, Ampelo. This is one of Dionysus's most famous and tragic loves. Ampelos was a satyr, or in some versions, a young mortal. He was loved intensely by Dionysus. After his accidental death, Dionysus transformed Ampelos into a vine, which is associated with Dionysus's invention of wine. According to legend, Prosimnus agreed to show Dionysus the way to the underworld to rescue his mother Semele, on the condition that he and Dionysus share an intimate encounter when she returned. However, Prosimnus died before the promise could be fulfilled, and Dionysus, as a sign of respect for the pact, carved a wooden figure in the shape of a phallus and performed the promised act. A nymph daughter of Aphrodite and Adonis. As we saw before, according to some legends, both Dionysus and Poseidon were in love with her, but she chose Poseidon over her. After her father, Icarius, was murdered by peasants who believed that the wine he had given them, a gift from Dionysus, had poisoned them, Aragone was taken by her dog Mera to the place where her father had been buried. Consumed by pain, Aragone hanged herself. Dionysius, angered by the tragedy, punished Athens with a plague and ordered young Athenian girls to hang themselves in memory of Aragone. On one occasion, Dionysius returned to Thebes, his hometown, to introduce his cult. However, Pentheus, the king of Thebes, rejected this cult and arrested Dionysus. As revenge, Dionysus enchanted the women of Thebes, including Pentheus's mother, taking them to the mountains where they indulged in frantic bacchanal dances. Pentheus was lured into observing these rituals and, in the process, was discovered and dismembered by the women, including his own mother. In addition, Dionysus had a thyrsus, and when he used it, the biggest love festival you could imagine was organized. So if you want to know what that object was made of, as well as the other most powerful weapons and armor in the Greek world, I suggest you watch this video. I'll leave it here above or below in the description. Number 5. Apollo. Apollo never married and inherited from his father Zeus the ability to spread love around the world. One of the most famous stories is that of Daphne, a nymph that Apollo became obsessed with after Eros hit him with one of his golden arrows of love, while he hit Daphne with a lead arrow, causing her to reject him. When Apollo pursued Daphne for her love, she prayed to the river Peneus to save her. In response, she was transformed into a laurel tree, and Apollo, in his obsessive love, declared that this tree would be sacred to him. Cassandra was a priestess of Troy, who was granted the gift of prophecy by Apollo in an attempt to seduce her. However, after receiving the gift, she rejected his advances. In revenge, Apollo cursed her gift, so that even though she always predicted the truth, no one would believe her. Sometime later, when faced with her repeated announcement of the imminent fall of Troy, no citizen believed her predictions. Apollo fell in love with the mortal Coronis, but when he discovered that she was being unfaithful with a mortal, he sent her sister Artemis to kill her. However, while Coronis was on the funeral pyre, Apollo rescued her unborn son, Asclepius, who later became the god of medicine. Hyacinth is one of Apollo's most famous male loves. Jacinto was a young Spartan of great beauty. After several romantic encounters, one day he and his lover were competing in the discus throw when Apollo, to demonstrate his power and impress Jacinto, threw it with all his strength. Jacinto, in turn, to impress Apollo, tried to catch him, was hit by the discus and fell dead. Devastated by the death of his lover, Apollo created the hyacinth flower from spilled blood. Cyparissus was a young man loved by Apollo. To win her love, Apollo gave Cyparissus one of his sacred deer. On one occasion, Apollo gave Cyparissus a javelin to hunt, but the young man, while trying to hunt another deer, mistakenly killed his own. The boy's pain over the loss of the animal was so intense that he asked the god Apollo to allow him to mourn it forever and for his tears to flow eternally. The god accepted his plea and turned him into a cypress, the tree of sadness, pain, and mourning for loved ones, consecrated since then to the deceased. Clytie was a nymph who fell deeply in love with Apollo. When Apollo scorned her for Leukoto, Clytie died of heartbreak and turned into a sunflower, a flower that follows the sun, represented by Apollo, as she moves across the sky. Cyrene renounced the work of women and dedicated herself to leading a wild life, watching over her father's flocks in the forests of the Pindus. Apollo encountered Cyrene while she was fighting a lion. Impressed by her bravery, he took her to Mount Pelion, where they had a son, Aristaeus, who became a minor god associated with hunting and beekeeping. Hera is probably the goddess who has been cheated on most often and has been unfaithful, which contrasts with her function as the goddess protector of marriage and guardian of married women, while her husband, not faithful and not loyal to the goddess, sought to spread love and affection to as many women as possible. Zeus did not care much about marriage to Hera, and much of Hera's cruelty stemmed from the jealousy and pain caused by Zeus's numerous infidelities. As a faithful wife, Hera felt constantly humiliated by her husband's affairs, which led her to take revenge not only on Zeus, but also on his lovers and descendants. At one point, she became so unhinged that she would punish for the sake of punishing, and would do evil deeds just to spite herself a little. Everything she could not do to her husband, she would make mortals and other gods pay for it. I'm not going to talk about all the horns they put on Hera. I'll leave that for another video. In this one, we are going to see some of the craziest revenge stories of Hera, the most toxic goddess of all times. One day, Zeus and Hera found themselves in the middle of a heated argument. The subject was a curious one. Who enjoyed sex more, men or women? Unable to reach an agreement, they decided to look for someone who could offer an unbiased perspective. They chose Tiresias, a mortal who had experienced life as both a man and a woman, making him the ideal candidate to resolve their dispute. Tiresias's transformation had occurred years earlier when, in a chance encounter, he had seen two snakes copulating, and, by striking them with his staff, was transformed into a woman. He lived like this for 7 years, until, meeting the snakes again and striking them again, he regained his male form. This singular experience endowed him with a unique perspective on the nature of men and women. When summoned by Zeus and Hera, Tiresias listened attentively to their arguments. Upon reflection, he answered truthfully that women enjoyed the sexual act more than men. This answer, though truthful, infuriated Hera, who felt insulted and belittled by a mortal's revelation. In a fit of anger, Hera decided to punish Tiresias by blinding him. Darkness closed over him, depriving him of his sight, a severe punishment for his honest intervention in the divine dispute. Zeus, although he could not undo the punishment imposed by Hera, wanted to compensate Tiresias in some way for the injustice he had suffered. Moved by the desire to balance the scales, Zeus granted Tiresias the gift of prophecy. This gift would not only compensate for the loss of his physical sight, it would also grant him a deeper and more far-reaching insight into the future and the mysteries of the world. It also granted him an exceptionally long life, allowing him to live for many generations and become one of the most respected and consulted prophets in all of Greece. One could say that Tiresias was even lucky. His mistake was to be honest, just as Procris and Cephalus's mistake was to love each other. Hera had observed the happiness of Procris and Cephalus from Olympus. Procris, daughter of the king of Athens, and Cephalus, a young hunter, were madly in love and living happily. Why could the two of them love each other madly, while Hera had to put up with Zeus' continuous dishonors? Knowing human nature and its weaknesses, Hera devised a plan to instill jealousy and mistrust in the couple's hearts. The goddess approached Cephalus, disguised as a beautiful young woman named Eos, the goddess of dawn. Using her divine power, Eos seduced Cephalus, making promises of eternal love. However, Cephalus, being faithful to Procris, resisted the temptations of the goddess. Frustrated, Hera Eos planted the seed of doubt in his mind, hinting that Procris might not be as loyal as he believed. Eos's whispers echoed in Cephalus's mind, and though he initially dismissed them, distrust began to grow. Determined to test his wife's fidelity, Cephalus devised a plan. He told Procris that he was to leave on a long hunting trip, but in reality, he hid near his home to observe her. Procris, oblivious to her husband's plans, was at home, worried about Cephalus's absence. During her vigil, she began to hear rumors of a woman who had tried to seduce her husband. Fearful and suspicious, Procris decided to find out the truth for herself. One night, Cephalus, hiding in the bushes, watched Procris leave the house with an anguished expression on his face. Driven by jealousy and paranoia, Cephalus believed that his wife was going to meet a secret lover. Without thinking, he picked up his javelin, a magical weapon that never missed its target, and hurled it at her. The javelin flew through the air, finding its target with deadly accuracy. Procris, mortally wounded, fell to the ground. Cephalus, seeing what he had done, ran to her, only to hear her last words. Procris, with her dying breaths, expressed her love and loyalty to Cephalus, revealing that she had gone out to find him because she had heard rumors of his infidelity. Cephalus, devastated by the truth and consumed by guilt, embraced his wife as life faded from his body. Hera, from Olympus, watched with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. But there was another case in which the goddess felt neither sorrow nor regret and enjoyed her revenge every second. Long ago, there was a small but prosperous tribe known as the Pygmies. Among them reigned Joanna, a beautiful and proud queen. Her beauty was such that even the gods noticed her, but it was her arrogance that finally attracted the attention and wrath of the goddess Hera. Joanna, intoxicated by her own beauty, claimed to be more beautiful than the goddess herself. Murmurs of her vanity quickly reached Olympus, where Hera could not allow such insolence. Determined to punish Joanna for her arrogance, Hera descended to the mortal world, ready to teach her a lesson she would never forget. One night, as Joanna was admiring herself in the mirror, Hera appeared before her in all her splendor. Joanna fell to her knees, but her fear did not calm Hera's fury. With a wave of her hand, Hera transformed Joanna into a crane, a beautiful bird with white feathers and a long neck. But the punishment did not end there. Hera decreed that the Pygmies, unaware that the crane was their former queen, would see her as a threat and pursue her relentlessly. Joanna, now a crane, found herself alone and rejected. The pygmies, unaware of her true identity, constantly tried to hunt her down. From Olympus, Hera watched in satisfaction, convinced that her lesson had been learned. You probably know the story of the Trojan War, the famous Trojan horse, or the legend of Achilles and his sinew. But do you know what caused all this? Well, if you have been paying attention during the video, the answer is clear. Once again, the jealousy of Hera? Seriously. She has earned the title of the most toxic goddess of all times. The history of the Trojan War is full of heroes, tragedies, and mighty gods. One of the most famous causes of this epic war can be traced back to an incident known as the Trial of the Golden Apples. It all began at the wedding of Peleus and Thetis, where all the gods were invited except Eris, the goddess of discord. Resentful at being excluded, Eris burst into the feast and threw a golden apple into the middle of the banquet, with the inscription, "For the most beautiful." 3 goddesses claimed the apple: Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. Zeus, to avoid further conflict, decided that Paris, the prince of Troy, known for his beauty and impartial judgment, would be the one to decide which of the 3 goddesses deserved the golden apple. Each of them tried to bribe him with tempting promises. Athena offered him wisdom and skill in war. Hera promised him power and dominion over all Asia, and Aphrodite promised him the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen of Sparta. Paris, seduced by Aphrodite's promise, gave the apple to the goddess of love. This act unleashed the fury of Hera, who felt deeply humiliated and snubbed. Hera vowed that Troy would pay dearly for Paris's decision. In time, Troy's fate began to crumble. Helen, the most beautiful woman, was abducted, or eloped, with Paris, which provoked the wrath of Menelaus, the king of Sparta and husband of Helen. Menelaus, along with his brother Agamemnon and other Greek kings, gathered a large army and set out for Troy to retrieve Helen, sparking the Trojan War. Hera fervently supported the Greeks in their effort to destroy Troy. From Olympus, she used all her influence to ensure that the Trojans suffered and were eventually defeated. He allied himself with other gods, such as Athena and Poseidon, who also had their own grudges against Troy. During the 10 years of war, Hera manipulated events, inspired Greek heroes, and turned the favor of the gods against Troy. Her hatred of Paris and her desire to punish the Trojans never wavered. Even at critical moments in the war, Hera intervened directly, helping the Greeks gain the upper hand in important battles. Eventually, the city of Troy fell by the trickery of the wooden horse, a strategy devised by Odysseus and supported by the Greek gods. Greeks hiding inside the horse opened the gates of Troy, allowing the Greek army to invade and destroy the city. The Trojans were slaughtered, their city razed to the ground, and the survivors taken as slaves. And despite all the death and destruction, this would not be by far her worst revenge, because there was a time when she almost managed to destroy the world itself. Both gods and mortals were in danger because of Hera's impulses, jealousy, and desire for revenge. No matter how much the goddess did, Zeus always found a way to disrespect her. His infidelities and capricious behavior had brought her to the limit of her patience. In an act of desperation, Hera decided to turn to one of the most fearsome beings that had ever existed, Typhon. This gigantic monster, born of Gaia, the earth, and Tartarus, the underworld, was a force of pure destruction. Typhon was a terrifying creature, with 100 fire-breathing dragon heads, whose voices echoed the roar of wild beasts. His size and strength were incomparable, capable of reaching for the stars and shaking the foundations of the world. Hera, in her desire to see Zeus suffer, used her power to free Typhon from his underground prison. Once free, the monster ascended towards Olympus, launching a ferocious attack on the gods. Flames and screams echoed throughout the sacred mountain as the gods struggled to defend their home. Zeus was immediately engaged in a titanic battle against Typhon. Despite his power, Zeus found himself in a desperate struggle, his thunderbolts barely affecting the monstrosity before him. The struggle between the two spread throughout Greece, causing earthquakes and storms as they clashed. The other gods, though powerful, also struggled to contain Typhon's fury. Hera watched from the shadows, with her heart torn between desire for revenge and fear for the destruction she had unleashed. Her hatred of Zeus had clouded her judgment, and now she saw the consequences of her actions. Finally, after a seemingly endless battle, Zeus mustered all his strength and with one last devastating bolt of lightning, struck Typhon with such force that the monster was hurled back into the depths of Tartarus, sealed once again for all eternity. Olympus fell silent in the aftermath of the storm, its gods exhausted and its temples damaged. Zeus, wounded but victorious, confronted Hera, and though furious at her betrayal, understood the pain she had felt for centuries. Heracles, whose name was later Romanized as Hercules, was the greatest of all the Greek heroes. The story of Hercules is sad, a life of pain and hardship. And in this video, we are going to know the story of Hercules and his 12 labors. Hera, the wife of Zeus, queen of the gods and goddess of women, marriage and the family, was jealous and vengeful of her husband's many mistresses and illegitimate children. But Zeus didn't really care, so he kept cheating on Hera, and Hera kept taking revenge for Zeus's conquests. On one of many occasions, Zeus used his power to disguise himself as Alcmene's husband, Amphitryon. Unable to detect the imposter, Alcmene received the king of the gods in her bed. That night she became pregnant and later gave birth to 2 children. Only Hercules inherited his father's semi-divine status. Zeus deceived her wife Hera by putting the baby to suckle from her breast to reaffirm his status as god, and thus grant him the great strength that characterized him. After Hera was tricked into nursing Hercules, she became obsessed with revenge, and since she couldn't punish her father, she would focus her rage on her son. She sent 2 snakes to her cradle, but Hercules immediately dispatched them with the strength he had received from Hera through her milk. Over the years, Hercules became a great warrior. In gratitude for expelling the Minions from Thebes, Creon, king of Thebes, offered his eldest daughter Megara to the hero in marriage. Hercules and Megara got married and had 3 strong children. The family lived happily together, but this wasn't happily ever after. It turns out that the jealous Greek gods don't let go of grudges so easily. Determined to make him suffer, Hera once again interfered in Hercules' life. Hera used her power to enter Hercules' head. He fell into madness and went mad with rage. Under the dark influence of Hera, he horribly murdered his beloved wife and his children. Worse yet, Hercules had no idea that he had murdered his wife and children due to Hera's trickery. When he came to, he was totally destroyed by his actions. Heartbroken, he set out to seek punishment for the horrible crimes he had committed. Our hero, filled with shame and racked with guilt, went to Pythia, the oracle of Delphi, to atone. He prayed to the god Apollo for guidance and was told to go to Tiryns to serve the king of Mycenae, Eurystheus, for 10 years as atonement for his crimes. He was then tasked with performing a series of astonishingly difficult feats called labors that took place throughout ancient Greece. If he succeeded, he would not only atone for his crimes, but would also be rewarded with immortality. Heracles truly despaired at the oracle's words, reluctant to serve a man he knew was far inferior to him, but fearful of opposing his father, Zeus. Finally, he made himself available to King Eurystheus. Eurystheus originally ordered Heracles to perform 10 labors. Later, we will see why there were finally 12. The 12 labors of Heracles. Number 1. Nemean Lion. Heracles wandered until he reached the city of Cleone. There he met a boy who said that if he killed the Nemean lion and returned alive within 30 days, the city would sacrifice a lion to Zeus. However, if Heracles did not return within 30 days, or if he died, the child would be sacrificed to Zeus. Another version of the story says that he met Melorkos, a shepherd who had lost his son to the lion, saying that if he returned within 30 days, a ram would be sacrificed to Zeus. If he did not return within 30 days, his corpse would be offered as a mourning offering. When he found and shot the lion, shooting it with his bow, he discovered the protective property of the skin as the arrow bounced harmlessly off the creature's thigh. After a while, Heracles made the lion return to his den. In those enclosed spaces, Heracles was able to stun the beast with his club and, using its immense strength, strangle it to death. During the fight, the lion bit one of his fingers. Others say that he shot arrows at her and eventually shot her in the unarmored mouth. After killing the lion, our hero tried to skin it with a knife from his belt but failed. He then tried to sharpen the knife with a stone and even tried it on the stone itself. Finally, the goddess Athena, realizing the hero's plight, told Heracles to use one of the lion's claws to skin the skin off him. When he returned on the 30th with the carcass of the lion on his shoulders, King Eurystheus was amazed and terrified. Fearful of the man's incredible powers, Eurystheus forbade him from ever entering the city again. Thereafter, he was to display the fruits of his labor outside the city gates. Eurystheus would not even personally announce Heracles' tasks, opting to pass as a herald. The king was so afraid of the hero's incredible power that he even had a large bronze jug made for himself in which to hide from Heracles should the need arise. Eurystheus then warned Heracles that the tasks assigned to him would become increasingly difficult. Number 2. Lernaean Hydra. Heracles' second job was to kill the Lernaean Hydra, which Hera had specifically bred to kill him. Arriving at the swamp near Lake Lerna, where the Hydra dwelt, Heracles used a cloth to cover his mouth and nose to protect himself from poisonous gases. He shot flaming arrows into the Hydra's lair, the spring of Amymone, which was in a deep cave from which it only emerged to terrorize nearby villages. He then confronted the Hydra, wielding either a harvest sickle, a sword, or her famous club. But of course, as he lopped off each of her heads, he discovered that 2 of them would grow back, an expression of the hopelessness of such a struggle for anyone but our hero. Also, one of the Hydra's heads, the middle one, was immortal. Details of the fight are set forth in the Bibliotheca. Realizing that he could not defeat the Hydra in this way, Hercules asked his nephew Iolaus for help. Then his nephew came up with the idea, possibly inspired by Athena, of using a torch to burn the neck stumps after each beheading. Heracles lopped off each head, and Iolaus then cauterized the split-open stumps. Seeing that Hercules was winning the fight, Hera sent a giant crab to distract him, but she of course crushed it under her foot. He cut off the only immortal head of the Hydra with a golden sword given to him by Athena. Heracles placed him under a large rock on the sacred path between Lerna and Elaeus, and dipped his arrows into the poisonous blood of the Hydra, thus completing his second task. Hera, upset that Hercules had killed the beast she had raised to kill him, placed it in the dark blue vault of the sky as the constellation Hydra. She then turned the crab into the constellation Cancer. Later, Heracles used an arrow dipped in the Hydra's poisonous blood to kill the centaur Nessus, but we will see this later. Number 3. Ceryneian Hind. Eurystheus and Hera were very angry that Heracles had survived both the Nemean lion and the Lernaean Hydra. For the third job, they found a task that they thought would spell doom for the hero. As it was clear that Heracles could defeat even the most fearsome opponents with his great strength, Eurystheus ordered him to capture the doe of Chaeronea, which was so fast that she could outrun an arrow. One day Heracles woke up and saw the doe by a flash of sunlight on her horns. Heracles then pursued the animal on foot through Greece, Thrace, Istria, and the land of the Hyperboreans for a whole year. In some versions of the story, he captured the doe in her sleep. In other versions, Artemis told her to put down the doe and tell Eurystheus all that had happened, and her third labor would be considered completed. Still another version states that Heracles struck down the stag with an arrow between its front legs. King Eurystheus had given Heracles this task in hopes of inciting Artemis's wrath towards Heracles for desecrating her sacred animal. When he was returning with the doe, Hercules met Artemis and her brother Apollo. He asked the goddess for forgiveness, explaining that she had to catch him as part of her penance, but she promised to return him. Artemis forgave him, thwarting Eurystheus's plan. Bringing the doe to Eurystheus, Hercules was told that it would become part of the king's menagerie. Heracles knew that he had to return the doe as he had promised, so he agreed to give it to him as long as Eurystheus himself came out and took it from him. Then the king appeared, but just as Heracles released the doe, she ran back to her mistress. Heracles left, commenting that Eurystheus had not been fast enough. Number 4. Erymanthian Boar. King Eurystheus was deeply disappointed that Heracles had somehow completed another gigantic task and was humiliated by the doe's escape, so he assigned Heracles another dangerous mission. According to some accounts, the fourth job was to bring the fearsome Erymanthian boar to Eurystheus alive. On the way to Mount Erymanthos, where the boar lived, Heracles visited Pholus, a kind and hospitable centaur and old friend. Heracles ate with Pholus in his cave and ordered wine. Pholus only had a jug of wine, a gift from Dionysus to all the centaurs on Mount Erymanthus. Heracles convinced him to open it, and the smell attracted the other centaurs. They did not understand that wine must be tempered with water, so they got drunk and attacked Heracles. He shot them with his poison arrows, killing many, and the centaurs retreated to Chiron's cave. Pholus was curious why the arrows caused so much death. He picked one up but dropped it, and the arrow struck his helmet, poisoning him. One version claims that a stray arrow also struck Chiron. He was immortal, but he still felt the pain. Chiron's pain was so great that he volunteered to renounce his immortality and take the place of Prometheus, who had been chained to the top of a mountain to have his liver eaten by an eagle every day. Prometheus's tormentor, the eagle, continued to torment Chiron, for which Heracles killed him with an arrow. The story is believed to be intended to show Heracles as the recipient of the immortality bestowed by Chiron. However, this story contradicts the fact that Chiron later taught Achilles. The story of the centaurs appears sometimes in other parts of the 12 works, as does the deliverance of Prometheus. Heracles had visited Chiron for advice on how to catch the boar, and Chiron had told him to lead it into the thick snow, which makes this work in the dead of winter. In fact, Heracles caught the boar, tied it up, and brought it to King Eurystheus, who was so scared that he crouched down in his custom-made storage pithos, begging Heracles to get rid of the fearsome beast. Number 5. The Augean Stables. This task was intended to be both humiliating and impossible, since these divine cattle were immortal and produced prodigious amounts of manure. The Augean stables had not been cleaned in over 30 years, and over 1,000 head of cattle lived there. However, Heracles succeeded in diverting the Alpheus and Peneus rivers to wash away the filth. Before starting the gigantic task, Heracles had asked Augeas for a tenth of the cattle if he finished the task in one day, and Augeas agreed. However, Augeas refused to honor the agreement on the grounds that Eurystheus had ordered Heracles to carry out the task anyway. Heracles claimed his reward at court and was supported by Augeas' son, Phyleus. Augeas banished them both before the court ruled. Heracles returned, killed Augeas, and gave his kingdom to Phyleus. The success of this work was eventually ruled out because the torrential waters had done the job of clearing the stables, and because Heracles was paid for completing the task. Therefore, King Eurystheus determined that Hercules still had 7 labors to perform. Number 6. Stymphalian birds. The 6th job was to defeat the Stymphalian birds, which were known to eat men, had bronze beaks and sharp metallic feathers that they could hurl at their victims. Birds were sacred to Ares, the Greek god of war. Furthermore, their droppings were highly toxic. They had migrated to Lake Stymphalia in Arcadia, where they rapidly reproduced and took over the countryside, destroying local crops, fruit trees, and even the townspeople. Heracles could not go too far into the swamp where they lived, because it would not support their weight. Athena, taking pity on Heracles, gave him a rattle that Hephaestus had made especially for the occasion. Heracles shook the rattle and startled the birds into the air. Then Heracles shot many of them with his arrows. The rest flew far away, never to return. The Argonauts would later encounter these creatures in their own exploits. Number 7. The Cretan Bull. The 7th labor was to capture the Cretan Bull, the father of the Minotaur. Heracles sailed to the island of Crete, where King Minos gave him permission to take the bull and even offered to help him. The bull had been wreaking havoc on Crete, uprooting crops and leveling the walls of orchards. Heracles snuck up behind the mighty animal and then used his hands to strangle it, stopping before it was killed, then sent it back to Tiryns. King Eurystheus, who hid in his pithos again when he saw the creature, wanted to sacrifice the bull to Hera. She refused the sacrifice because it reflected the glory of Heracles. The bull was then released and roamed Marathon, becoming known as the Marathonian Bull. Number 8. The Mares of Diomedes. As the 8th of his 12 labors, also categorized as the 2nd of the non-Peloponnese labors, King Eurystheus sent Heracles to steal Diomedes' mares. The mares' madness was attributed to their unnatural diet consisting of the meat of unsuspecting guests or strangers to the island. The mares, which were the terror of Thrace, were tied with iron chains to a bronze manger in the now-defunct city of Tyrrhida. They were called Podargos, the Swift One, Lampon, the Shining One, Xanthos, the yellow one, and Dinos, the terrible one. In one version of this feat, Heracles brought in several volunteers to help him capture the giant horses. After subduing Diomedes' men, he broke the chains that bound the horses and led the mares into the sea. Unaware that they were man-eaters and uncontrollable, Heracles left them in the charge of his favorite companion, Abderus, while he set out to fight Diomedes. Upon his return, Heracles discovered that the child had been eaten. As revenge, Heracles fed Diomedes his own horses. In another version, Heracles, who was visiting the island, kept awake so that Diomedes would not cut his throat in the night and cut the chains that bound the horses once everyone was asleep. After startling the horses on the high ground of a mound, Heracles quickly dug a trench across the peninsula, filling it with water and thus flooding the low plain. When Diomedes and his men turned to flee, Heracles hacked them to death with an axe and fed Diomedes' body to the horses to calm them down. In another version, Heracles first captured Diomedes and fed him to the mares before setting them free. Only after realizing that his king was dead did his men, the Bistonians, attack Heracles. Seeing the charging mares led in a cart by Abderus, the Bistonians turned and fled. All versions of this haunting tale recount how eating human flesh makes the horses calmer, giving Heracles the opportunity to shut their mouths and easily lead them to King Eurystheus. In some versions, they were allowed to roam freely around Argos, having been tamed. But in others, Eurystheus ordered the horses brought to Olympus to be sacrificed to Zeus. However, he repulsed them and sent wolves, lions, and bears to kill them. Number 9. Hippolyta's magical belt. King Eurystheus' daughter Admete desired the girdle of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons, which had been a gift from her father Ares. To please his daughter, Eurystheus ordered Heracles to retrieve the belt as his 9th great labor. Heracles set sail with a group of friends and stopped on the island of Paros, which was inhabited by the children of Minos. Heracles took 2 of Minos' grandsons, Alcaeus and Sthenelus, continuing on his journey and landing at the court of Lycus, whom Heracles defended in a battle against the Bebryces' king Mygdon. After killing King Mygdon, Heracles gave much of the land to his friend Lycus. Lycus called the land Heraclea. The crew then set off for Themyscira, where Hippolyta lived. Everything would have gone well for Heracles if it hadn't been for Hera. Hippolyta, impressed with Heracles and his exploits, agreed to give him the belt, and would have if Hera had not disguised herself and walked among the Amazons, sowing seeds of mistrust. She claimed that the strangers were conspiring to take the queen of the Amazons. Alarmed, the women rode off to confront Heracles. When Heracles saw them, he thought that Hippolyta had been planning such a betrayal all along, and she had never intended to give up the belt from her. So he killed her, took the belt, and returned to Eurystheus. Number 10. Geryon's cattle. The 10th labor was to obtain the cattle of the 3-bodied giant Geryon. In the most complete Bibliotheca account of Pseudo-Apollodorus, Heracles had to go to the far western island of Erythea to obtain the cattle. On the way, he crossed the Libyan desert and became so frustrated by the heat that he shot an arrow into the sun. The sun god Helios, in admiration of his valor, gave Heracles the golden cup that Helios used to sail across the sea from west to east each night. When Heracles landed on Erythea, he was confronted by the 2-headed dog Orthrus. With a swing of his olive wood club, Heracles slew the beast. Eurytion, the shepherd, came to help Ortro, but Heracles treated him in the same way. Hearing the commotion, Geryon sprang into action, bearing 3 shields and 3 spears, and wearing 3 helmets. He attacked Heracles at the Anthemus River, but was killed by one of Heracles' poisoned arrows. Heracles fired with such force that the arrow pierced Geryon's forehead, so Heracles had to drive the cattle back to Eurystheus. In the Roman versions of the narrative, Heracles drove the cattle over the Aventine Hill at the future siege of Rome. The giant Cacus, who lived there, stole some of the cattle while Heracles was sleeping, making the cattle walk backwards so they would leave no trace. According to some versions, Heracles drove the remaining cattle past the cave where Cacus had hidden the stolen animals, and they began to call each other. In other versions, Caco's sister Caeca told Heracles where he was. Heracles then killed Cacus and erected an altar on the site. Later, this place would become the Forum Boarium of Rome, the cattle market. To annoy Heracles, Hera sent a horsefly to bite the cattle, irritate it and scatter it. Within a year, Heracles recovered them. Hera then sent a flood that raised the level of a river so high that Heracles was unable to cross with the cattle. She stacked stones in the river to make the water shallower. When he finally arrived at Eurystheus' court, the cattle were sacrificed to Hera. As we saw before, Eurystheus originally ordered Hercules to perform 10 labors. He duly fulfilled these tasks, but Eurystheus refused to acknowledge 2 of them: the slaying of the Lernaean Hydra, since Iolaus, Heracles' nephew and charioteer, had assisted him, and the cleaning of the Augean stables because Heracles had accepted payment for the work. The king set 2 more tasks. Number 11. Golden Apples of the Hesperides. The first additional job was to steal 3 of the golden apples from the Garden of the Hesperides. Heracles first had to catch the Old Man of the Sea, the shape-shifting god of the sea, in order to learn where the Garden of the Hesperides was located. In some variations of the tale, Heracles, either at the beginning or at the end of this task, meets Antaeus, who was invincible as long as he touched his mother, Gaia, the earth. Heracles then killed Antaeus by holding him up and crushing him in a bear hug. Heracles finally made his way to the Garden of the Hesperides, where he met Atlas holding the heavens on his shoulders. Heracles persuaded Atlas to get him the 3 golden apples by offering to hold the heavens in place for a while. Atlas could get the apples because, in this version, he was the father or related to the Hesperides. When Atlas returned, he decided that he did not want the heavens back, and instead offered to deliver the apples himself. But Heracles tricked him into agreeing to stay in Atlas's place. According to an alternative version, Heracles killed Ladon, the dragon that guarded the apples. King Eurystheus raged again because Heracles had accomplished something he had thought could not be done. Number 12. Cerberus, the dog of Hades. The 12th and final labor was the capture of Cerberus, the 3-headed dog with a dragon's tail who was the guardian of the gates of the underworld. To prepare for his descent into the underworld, Hercules went to Athens to be initiated into the Eleusinian mysteries. He then entered the underworld with the gods Hermes and Athena as his guides. While in the underworld, Heracles met Theseus and Pirithous. The 2 companions had been imprisoned by Hades for trying to kidnap Persephone. One tradition tells of snakes coiling around their legs and then turning to stone. Another that Hades feigned hospitality and prepared a banquet, inviting them to sit down. They unknowingly sat in chairs of oblivion and became permanently trapped. When Heracles had first pulled Theseus from his saddle, part of his thigh stuck to him, but the earth trembled at the attempt to free Persephone, whose desire to have the goddess for himself was so insulting that he was doomed to be left behind. Heracles found Hades and asked permission to bring Cerberus to the surface, to which Hades agreed if Hercules could subdue the beast without using weapons. Heracles subdued Cerberus with his bare hands and hung the beast on his back. He brought Cerberus out of the underworld through a cave entrance in the Peloponnese and brought him to King Eurystheus, who fled back to his Pythos in fear. Eurystheus begged Heracles to return Cerberus to the underworld, offering in return to release him from any further work when Cerberus disappeared again with his master. After Hercules successfully completed all 12 labors, Apollo's promise of an immortal life on Mount Olympus was still in the way of many difficult years. Hercules had to rescue the Trojan princess from a hungry sea monster and help Zeus defeat the giants in a great battle for control of Olympus before he could take his earned place among the Olympians. Hercules traveled to various places, one of which was called Calydon. Calydon is where Deianira lived. She was the daughter of King Aeneo and Queen Altea, which made her Princess of Calydon. Hercules immediately fell in love with Deianira when he saw her, and Deianira was beautiful and many men wanted to marry her, but she was not interested in marrying any of them. When Hercules asked for her hand in marriage, most of the suitors backed down. The only suitor who challenged Hercules for the hand of Deianira was Achelous, god of the river. Hercules battles Achelous and eventually wins Deianira's hand in marriage. Hercules and Deianira would travel to various lands after getting married. During their travels, they came into contact with a centaur named Nessus. Nessus was killed with one of the arrows Hercules used to kill the Lernaean Hydra. The arrows were still soaked in the Hydra's poison when she shot Nessus. As Nessus was dying, he told Deianira that her blood contained a love potion that could make anyone fall in love. And this could only happen when the blood was applied to her skin. Nessus convinced Deianira to save her blood in a vial to use on Hercules if he ever looked at another woman. This would keep Hercules faithful to her and prevent him from seeking her love elsewhere. One day, upon returning home from what would be her last adventure, Deianira gave Hercules a cape. He had covered it with what he thought was a magical balm that would guarantee her love for her forever. Unfortunately for Hercules, the salve was actually poison. When Hercules put on the cloak, he started to burn it. Unable to remove his cloak, Hercules was sure that death was the only release from this agonizing pain. And so a huge funeral pyre was built for the hero on top of Mount Oeta. Just as the fire began to burn around Hercules, the gods looked down from Mount Olympus. At that moment, Hera finally agreed that Hercules had suffered enough. Zeus sent Athena to save Hercules from the burning pyre and take him to Mount Olympus in his chariot. Finally, the hero got his deserved reward. Do you know the story of the fearsome Minotaur of Crete, a creation of Poseidon to take revenge for the offenses of King Minos? The myth of Theseus and the Minotaur is one of the most tragic and fascinating legends in Greek mythology. This story reflects how the bravery and cunning of Theseus freed the world from this horrible beast. In this video of Greek mythology, we will learn about the legend of the hero Theseus and his confrontation with the fearsome Minotaur. The birth of the Minotaur and the labyrinth of Crete. King Minos of Crete fought hard against his brother to ascend to the throne. Having gained kingship and exiled his brother, Minos prayed to Poseidon, the god of the sea, for a snow-white bull, as a sign of the god's approval. Minos was supposed to sacrifice the bull when he appeared, but it was so beautiful that he kept it. Poseidon, angered by Minos' ingratitude and selfishness, made Minos' wife, Persephone, fall so in love with the bull that she mated with the animal. Her offspring was a male, a devastating half-man, half-animal creature. At first, the Minotaur was cared for by Persephone, but as he grew older, he became violent, and Minos had the architect Daedalus design an intricate labyrinth within the palace. According to the myth, Minos imprisoned his enemies in the labyrinth so that the Minotaur could eat them. The maze was such a complicated construction that no one could find the way out alive. One day, Androgeos, son of Minos, went to Athens to participate in the Panathenaic Games. Androgeos was an outstanding athlete. He arrived in Athens and defeated all of his competitors. Envious, Aegeus, king of Athens and putative father of Theseus, invited him to go kill the bull of Marathon. The young man accepted but was killed by the beast. Because of this, Minos invaded Attica, and after winning the contest, imposed on Athens as a tribute to his son the offering of 7 young men and 7 girls that would be offered to the Minotaur of the Labyrinth of Crete every 9 years. Many years later, in the 3rd offering, Theseus, son of Aegeus and king of Athens, volunteered to be one of the 7 young men who would go to Crete to kill the Minotaur and end human sacrifices to the monster. But first, we have to meet the hero of this story. Theseus finds his father's sword. Theseus and his mother Aethra lived at the foot of a great mountain in a place called Trojan. One day, long before the earliest time Theseus could remember, Aegeus, Theseus's father, took Aethra to the woods near the mountainside. There he raised a huge rock and buried under it his sword and his sandals. Then, rolling the rock back to his place, he told Aethra that when Theseus was strong enough to lift this rock, she could let him take the sword and sandals and go to Athens with her father. This was the last time Aethra saw Aegeus, but she knew that he was the king of Attica, and he was sitting on the throne in the beautiful city of Athens. On the night Aethra became pregnant, Poseidon was also believed to have been with her, so Theseus may have been a demigod. At last the time came when Theseus reached all the strength of a man and was able to lift the great rock. Then, taking the sword and sandals from under him, he secured the sword at his side, put the sandals on his feet, and was soon ready to depart for Athens. At that time, the region between. Thurston and Athens was wild and rocky, and behind many of the rocks lurked giants and robbers ready to leap and attack lone travelers. But by sea, the way was much safer. Aethra's father, who was getting old and weak, thought that it would be better for Theseus to go by sea. But Theseus said no. With the help of his father's sword, it would be enough. Then Theseus bade farewell to his mother and his grandfather and set out on his journey by land. He had not gone far among the wild rocks near Trojan when he was attacked by robbers and giants, but none of them could defeat Theseus and his father's sword. A giant named Sinus would bend the tops of 2 pine trees, tie travelers to the trees, and then let them jump again, splitting the traveler in 2. Not far away lived another thief, Procrustes, who used to pretend to entertain strangers in his hotel. If they were too tall for his bed, he would cut off their heads or feet. If they were too short for him, he would stretch them to fit him. Procrustes was also defeated by Theseus. Later, other thieves and giants suffered the same fate. When Theseus arrived in Athens, he was well known in that city, for the people along the way had been anxious to spread the news of what he had done. In fact, only one man in all of Athens knew nothing of his coming, and that man was his own father, Aegeus, the king. At that time, Medea, a beautiful woman and a famous sorceress, lived in the king's palace. Since she had a son whom she wished to place on the throne after the departure of King Aegeus, she regrets that Theseus came to Athens. But this perfectly natural feeling of Medea led to a very evil act. Through her knowledge of poisonous herbs, she mixed a very potent potion, which would cause instant death to anyone who drank it. Then, trying to cloud the mind of the Aegean king, she told him that the young foreigner was a traitor, and she had planned to assassinate him. She convinced him to give Theseus a cup when he appeared on the throne. Not thinking that it might contain poison, Theseus innocently raised the fatal cup to his lips, intending to drink for the king. At that moment, Aegeus noticed the sword that Theseus was carrying, and knew from the carving on the ivory hilt that the supposed traitor was his own son. Instantly, he snatched the cup from Theseus's hand and welcomed the young man as a father should welcome his son. When Medea saw that her evil plan had failed and that Theseus was recognized by her father, she was frightened. She didn't dare plot any more mischief against Theseus, but she used all of her magic to get away safely, where she never dared to return. The people wasted no time in telling the king all the brave deeds Theseus had done on his way from Troezen. The king was so pleased with what he heard, and so pleased that his son was coming to Athens, that he announced that the city would have 3 days of public rejoicing and feasting. However, in the midst of all this celebration, a messenger arrived to notify King Aegeus that the tribute collectors had arrived from Crete. As we saw at the beginning of this story, long before, the eldest son of King Midas of Crete had been assassinated in Athens. To avenge the death of the prince, King Midas brought a large army against Athens and demanded that the Athenians pay him a tribute every 9 years of 7 young men and 7 young women, chosen from the noble families of Athens. It was rumored that the children of the tribute, as these young men were called, were destined to be the meals of the Minotaur, a bloodthirsty and brutal creature with the body of a man and the head of a bull that King Minos kept in a labyrinth near his palace. No one who had entered the maze had ever come out again. The cruel tribute had already been paid twice, and now the Athenians had to pay it a 3rd time. Theseus immediately decided to kill the monstrous Minotaur and thus put an end to the tribute. Although King Aegeus tried to persuade him not to do so, he offered himself as one of the 7 youths before lots were cast. This pleased the Athenians and made Theseus very popular. On the appointed day, the other 6 young men and the 7 young women were chosen at random, and everything was ready to set sail. In undertaking such a sad journey, it seemed convenient that the ship that carried the children of the tribute should have black sails. This had been done on the 2 previous occasions when the tribute had been paid. Now that there was some hope of a successful outcome to the voyage, King Aegeus gave Theseus a white sail, which he told him to hoist instead of the black one, if he managed to kill the Minotaur and set off on the journey home safe. Theseus promised his father that he would have white sails hoisted on his return from Crete. The old king then took his leave and said to Theseus, "From the top of that rock I will watch every day for your return." Then the black-sailed ship slowly left the pier. The young men he was carrying were very sad, for they never expected to see the sunny shores of Greece again, at least none of them except Theseus. Arrival in Crete. When the sons of the tribute arrived in Crete, Theseus informed King Minos that he intended to kill the Minotaur. King Minos told the prince that if he could accomplish this task, he and all his friends would be free, and that the youth tribute every 9 years would end. The truth is that this hideous Minotaur was not at all a pleasant pet to have, as there was always the possibility that he could break out of the maze and cause endless damage. Therefore, King Minos would have been really glad to get rid of the Minotaur. However, he was so hard-hearted that he did not allow Theseus to go armed to meet the monster. Therefore, there was very little hope that the hero would succeed. That night, the young Athenians were thrown into a dungeon under the palace of King Minos, one of them destined for the Minotaur's breakfast in the morning. Directly above this dungeon were the rooms of King Minos's 2 daughters, Ariadne and Phaedra. While the 2 sisters were standing on the wall, enjoying the moonlight, they heard the complaints of the prisoners. "What a pity," said Ariadne, "that these young men become food for the Minotaur," and they thought that if he was willing, they should help him kill the Minotaur. Phaedra was as eager as Ariadne to help the young prince, so the 2 of them made a plan that they thought might succeed. Ariadne waited for the entire king's household to fall asleep, then tiptoed to the dungeon and opened the door. Exhausted by lethargy and anxiety, all the prisoners except Theseus had fallen asleep. Theseus, however, was wide awake. Ariadne gestured for her to come out. Then, she took him to the place where the famous labyrinth was located. Its white marble walls looked very tall and strong in the moonlight. The night was very quiet, except for the sound of waves crashing on the shore, and Theseus could clearly hear the heavy breathing of the sleeping Minotaur. "This is the best time to attack the creature. Don't wait until morning," Ariadne whispered, and Theseus knew that he was right. "The Minotaur's lair is in the very heart of the labyrinth," Ariadne continued. "The sound of his breathing will show you which way to go. Here is a sword, and here is a ball of thread, so that you mark the path and can return after killing the beast." With these words, she handed him the sword and the ball of thread, of which she held one end in her own hand, then opened a door for him that led to a secret passage in the maze. Theseus, sword in one hand and ball of thread in the other, entered the labyrinth. The interior, in its entirety, was divided into narrow paths, bordered by high walls. Many of these paths ended in a blank wall that Theseus often had to retrace his steps. There was never another labyrinth half as complicated as this one, which was built by the famous Daedalus. Theseus came and went in and out. He could hear the heavy breathing becoming clearer, and he knew he was getting closer to the center, where the monster he was looking for lived. Meanwhile, Ariadne was at the door, Ariadne holding her end of the thread. I wait a long time. So much so that the moon set behind the hills and left only the light of the stars. Then she heard a great crash that shook the strong walls of the maze. After this, everything was calm again. Ariadne found it difficult to wait now, for she did not know if Theseus lay dead within, or if she had not been killed by the Minotaur. She might have dropped the thread in the fight and been lost in the maze of forest paths. At last, she felt the thread tighten, and in a moment more Theseus came out, saying that he had killed the Minotaur. Fortunately, the ship that had carried Theseus and his companions to Crete was still on shore. This made it possible to escape from King Minos before dawn. Before going on board, Theseus asked the daughter of King Minos to return to Athens with him. "Your father, the king, will be angry," he said, "when he finds out how you have helped me. This will be the best way to escape from his fury." Having good reason to fear the cruelty of King Minos, the princess accepted this invitation. On the way to Athens, the young men stopped on the island of Naxos. Here, the young men, exhausted from hard rowing and in dire need of rest, hauled the boat ashore, where the entire company made camp on the rocks for the night. Very early the next morning, they set sail and set out again. But Ariadne, who was fast asleep on a rock, was left behind. When this poor princess woke up, she could hardly believe that Theseus had really intended to leave her. Yet there was the boat dancing on the waves, almost out of sight. She watched him until she could no longer look into the sparkling water because of the tears in her eyes. And then she heard strange music, a sound of tambourines and flutes, a lyre and the sound of cymbals. She turned to look into the woods behind her, where her sounds were coming from, and saw a chariot pulled by 2 panthers. In the chariot sat Dionysus, the god of wine, dressed in a mottled deerskin and a crown of fresh ivy leaves. He was surrounded by a merry, dancing crowd of nymphs and satyrs. When Dionysus heard Ariadne's story, he said, "Certainly Theseus should have taken you to Athens. and considering all you did to help him, he should, at the very least, have made you queen. But no matter, you will have a crown better than any he could have given you." With these words, the god placed a crown of 9 bright stars on Ariadne's head. After this, he persuaded the other gods to take her to heaven, among themselves. There, in the northern sky, her crown still shines. The return to Athens. The Greek hero was supposed to change the ship's black sails to white so that his father, King Aegeus, would know that his son was still alive and had conquered the Minotaur. However, Theseus forgot. His father, who was waiting at Cape Sunion, threw himself into the sea from a cliff when he saw that the ship was returning with black sails. Consequently, he drowned. Therefore, the sea became known as the Aegean Sea, after King Aegeus. So when the sons of the tribute arrived safely in port after such a perilous voyage, there was mourning instead of rejoicing. After Theseus was made king, he brought her mother Aethra to Athens and took good care of her for the rest of her life. Theseus ruled wisely and was kind to the poor and unfortunate. King Midas of Phrygia is a legendary figure in Greek mythology. His place in Greek literature and culture is curious. On one hand, he is honored and famous for being a man of legendary wealth. On the other hand, he is often ridiculed and presented as an arrogant character. The most popular myth about Midas is the one in which the king gains the Midas touch, the infamous ability to turn everything he touches into gold with disastrous consequences. In another story, he is given the ears of a donkey as punishment for his arrogance. Midas was a mythical king of Phrygia and the son of Gordius and the goddess Cybele. According to legend, Midas was the richest man of his time and famous for the story in which he obtained the Midas touch, the ability to turn everything he touched into gold. According to Pausanias, he founded the city of Ankara, the capital of present-day Turkey. Furthermore, in Greek art, he is often depicted with the ears of a fawn or donkey. Some ancient authors claim that he committed suicide by drinking the blood of an ox, while Aristotle writes that he starved to death, unable to eat due to his golden touch. According to Herodotus, Midas was the first foreign king to send offerings to the sanctuary of Apollo at Delphi. There is also a tomb in the city of Gordium called the Tomb of Meda, but it is doubtful that it actually belonged to a king named Midas. The most popular Midas story is the one in which the king was cursed with the golden touch. Interestingly, the story implies another rustic god, Silenus, the foster father and mentor of Dionysus. The story varies depending on the source, but more or less goes along the following lines. Silenus was a god known for drinking wine until he passed out. He loved to drink, dance, sing, and sleep. According to Ovid's version of the story, on one of his journeys with Dionysus, Silenus strayed from the god of wine and was captured by Midas's men, who brought him before the king. In another version of the story, Midas specifically set out to lure Silenus to his palace, either by filling a spring with wine or by making a wine fountain. Silenus was successfully lured and captured by Midas as the god fell asleep. In any case, King Midas treated Silenus as the guest of honor. In addition, Midas was already initiated into the mystical rites of Dionysus and had met Silenus before. It is even said that they were old friends. It is not surprising then that, to please him, Midas threw a great party that lasted 11 days. Once the party was over, Midas helped Silenus return to Dionysus, who was extremely worried about his favorite companion. To show his gratitude to Midas for treating Silenus well, Dionysus offered the king a wish. Midas could have asked for whatever he wanted. However, the king, blinded by his love for money, asked that everything he touched turn into gold. Dionysius granted the wish, even though he knew it would lead to nothing good. As Midas happily walked away with his new ability, Dionysus was saddened because he knew the misfortunes that would befall the king. Midas immediately began to test the new power of him. At first, he was hesitant. He snapped a twig from an oak tree, and to his own surprise, the twig turned golden. He then picked up a stone, and it also turned to gold. Next was a clod, some grains, wheat, and some apples. Everything turned to gold. When he returned to his palace, Midas discovered that he was leaving golden door handles behind him. Every time he opened a door, it turned to gold. The first problem appeared when he tried to wash his hands and found that the water turned into a golden shower. However, the king still kept his optimism and ordered food from him. His servants prepared the table, but the king could not eat. Bread, meat, wine, and even water turned to gold as soon as they came in contact with his hands or his mouth. He even inadvertently turned one of his daughters into a golden statue. The golden blessing had turned into a golden curse as Midas began to suffer from hunger and thirst. He now prayed to Dionysus, asking him to reverse the curse. Dionysus felt sorry for the king and helped him. He told her to travel to the stream that runs by the great city of Sardis and follow its waters until she found its source. Then, he would immerse his head and body in the snow foam where the spring gushes from the mountain, and thus the curse would disappear. King Midas acted accordingly and bathed in the waters of the river. The river filled with gold when the curse was lifted. Midas was finally free. The river where Midas washed away the curse was the Pactolus River. With this myth, the Greeks explained the rich gold reserves of the river. In another story, King Midas abandoned his kingdom and wealth after the curse of his golden touch was lifted to become a follower of the god Pan, god of shepherds and flocks in Greek mythology. Together they traveled until they reached Mount Tmolus. There, Pan played his music for the forest nymphs and proclaimed his superiority over Apollo's music. The news soon reached Apollo, and he challenged Pan to a musical contest with Mount Tmolus as the judge. Pan played some rustic sounds on his aulos, bagpipe, followed by the sound of Apollo's lyre. It was very clear to Tmolus that Apollo's music was better than Pan's. Everyone in the crowd agreed, all except the devoted follower of Pan, King Midas. Midas openly questioned Tmolus's judgment. However, a mortal who judges a god is arrogant and cannot be accepted. Apollo decided to punish the mortal by replacing the human ears that had deceived him with donkey ears. Midas was ashamed of his ears, so he hid them under a purple turban. He was careful not to let anyone know his secret, but there was one man who did, Midas's barber. Of course, Midas had made the man swear to secrecy. In addition, the hairdresser himself did not want to betray the secret. However, he felt that the secret was too much to bear. He had to tell someone, or at least say it out loud. So he went to the forest, he dug a hole and whispered in the hollow ground, "Midas has donkey ears." He then buried the whisper and left. From the hole grew a grove of trees that finally told the secret to a southerly wind that carried the words to a nearby city. Before long, everyone knew that Midas had donkey ears. The moral of the King Midas story is that greed and excessive desire for wealth and power can lead to disastrous consequences, and that if you piss off Apollo, you will grow donkey ears. You have more Greek stories and mythologies on the channel, so come and take a look, subscribe, comment, and share this video. It's a great help to me. I'll wait for you in next week's video.